Good afternoon, everyone. Members, if you would join me on the dais. The Organizational Development Standing Committee of the Richmond City Council will now come to order. Madam Clerk, if you would please read the chamber emergency evacuation announcement followed by the public speaker guidelines.
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed down 9th Street and enter the assembly area located in the former public safety building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually and hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building. Persons speaking at public hearings are generally allowed 3 minutes to speak. Those appearing before the committee are not allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person, including comments directed at public officials or staff members that are not related to their official duties, or address or question staff members directly. All questions are to be directed to the committee chair. Failure to adhere to the guidelines may result in speakers forfeiting any remaining time and further disciplinary action as necessary, which could include barring from attendance at future committee meetings for a period of 6 months.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, pursuant to Rule 3D4B of Council's Rules of Procedure, Committee Member Stephanie Lynch has requested to participate in this Organizational Development Standing Committee meeting via Microsoft Teams from the Doubletree Hotel located at 4156 La Vista Road in Tucker, Georgia, as she is there for work. The committee members present must adopt a motion to approve her participation in this meeting by electronic communication means if it appears to us that her request complies with Rule 3D. At this time, pursuant to Council's rules, I will solicit a motion from the members physically assembled approving Ms. Lynch's participation in this meeting by electronic communication means.
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
Council is now voting on the motion to approve Ms. Lynch's request to participate in this meeting through electronic communication means. Mr. Breton, Ms. Gibson, Ms. Jones, Ms. Robertson, Ms. Trammell, Ms. Abubakar, Vice President Jordan,
Aye.
and President Newbill.
Aye.
That motion has been approved. And Madam Chair, for the record, all members are in attendance this evening. I do not see Ms. Lynch join to the meeting just yet.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the reports for this evening, starting with the Regional Water Coordination Update, which will be provided by our CAO, Mr. Odie Donald, and our Public Utilities Director, Mr. Scott Morris.
All righty. Good afternoon or good evening, Council. How y'all doing this evening?
Good. Good afternoon, Mr. Donald.
All righty. We're definitely honored to come before you today. Just wanted to give you a regional update on some of the works and happenings that have been taking place during the regional water coordination with our partners. I'll get us started, but most of the heavy lifting will be done by Mr. Scott Morris, our resident expert. All righty, so we'll start off with just a quick snapshot of our region. As you know, just the city of Richmond's water plant built in 1924, and let me just make sure it's going, okay, got it. Well, just really quickly, slide represents our regional water treatment system. You look at each one of these turns of the gear and you'll see that these are just our various partners. real thing that that's supposed to represent is that we really don't do this alone. We're all kind of a part of delivering on this regional water system, and we're kind of proud to stand tall with our partners in Henrico, Chesterfield, and Hanover, who we help lead the water system, and personally looking forward to making sure we have continued collaboration with these partners. When we look at our assets, and that's just one of the things for the edification of the public that I wanted to highlight, City of Richmond's water plant, as you know, was built in 1924, having served the region with a lot of clean drinking water for over 100 years now. Cities had the privilege of owning and operating this great regional asset that does require a little bit of work and ensures that we meet our responsibility of making sure everybody has clean drinking water. So I was not here in January, but with any crisis, you know, you can either learn from the event, grow stronger from it, or let it weaken you. And so I think our work with the region has been really focused on making sure that we improve our services and really learn from some of the challenges that took place in January. I think we all know Richmond is a strong city and are becoming even stronger along with our regional partners. And I think Mayor Avula has really been focused on making sure that we strengthen this partnership and kind of spread the burden of responsibility across all of our partners. And so these partnerships include regional planning, making sure that we're focused on building a more resilient water system and ensuring that we're serving the region, you know, for all of the time to come, hopefully another 100 years, leveraging this plant and all of the other assets that we have. What I also wanted to do is just give you a quick snapshot of what our regional capacity is before I turn it over to Mr. Morris. So when you look at these regional totals, it kind of tells you the strength of our entire system. So our water plant is supplying the capacity you see in that center box of those regional totals, about 132 million gallons per day of drinking water, serving a combined 530,000 residents, really serving our region well, but also coming with a ton of responsibility. You can also see that the historical demand has been at around 96 million gallons a day. So we do have a little bit of room for capacity and, you know, making sure that the growth that Richmond and our region is experiencing, we're well positioned to be able to deliver on. And then I think you see the numbers for each jurisdiction kind of broken down so you can really kind of get a deep dive into how we're planning and what we're looking at in our region. And so with that, just want to give you a quick snapshot of where we were and what our region looks like. And I'd love to turn it over to our subject matter expert, Director Scott Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Donald, and thank you, council members, for allowing me the opportunity to present on where we are today and our efforts for regional planning. I'm going to go over the current time frame and next steps, and just kind of bring you up to speed of what we've done to date. This is a very succinct little time frame that we put together just to kind of show you what we're doing. So since January, we've been going through and reviewing all of our condition assessments, looking at all the reports that can be varying from the VDH report, EPA report, HNTB report, SEH report, and then the sanitary survey that VDH conducted. And just seeing where our needs are for CIP or capital improvements. We did the first CIP meeting in August 18th, and we also looked at our budget and our rate model development that same day. That meeting kind of entailed us meeting with Hanover, Chesterfield, Henrico, and talking about the needs for the water treatment plant, water transmission, pumping, and the distribution system, and just getting a general consensus on the need for any of the projects. There was a general agreement to move forward with the CIP as proposed for a 10-year CIP. So based off that, we inputted several rate model assumptions and scenarios. And then on August 25th, we moved forward with doing a regional tabletop exercise. This is the first one we've done for utilities in a long time. I think since I've been in the region, to be completely frank. Regional tabletop exercise went through looking at cybersecurity threats, looking at condition assessments, looking at Regency resiliency, looking at point of entries, capacities, just an open dialogue between the utility directors to make sure that we can handle or plan for additional resiliency in the system. And then through August and September previously August, September, and the upcoming month, we will be reevaluating the assumptions with City Council. So we'll be having conversations with you on the budget and the rate model that's being developed and get input and feedback from that and see if any of our positions change or conditions change or any of our assumptions change within those rate models. Next steps overall, obviously we would be presenting a proposal to our regional partners and to city councils on what that rate model would look like, and then our budget would look like for water. We're going to be finalizing that proposal. Ideally, we would like to submit that budget request for consideration in the state budget. And then, obviously, the mayor is going to submit the budget to city council to review in its totality. And then, moving forward beyond that, the city budget and the state budget would be adopted with any type of amendments or budget considerations in that. Depending on the outcome of all these items, we would reevaluate any of our rate model assumptions and position ourselves to adjust the budget or rate depending on the approval from City Council and also from the state budget. With that, I'll open myself up to any questions you may have on the actions taken to date or the future actions.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Members, are there questions for Mr. Morris? Councilmember Gibson?
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to, one of the questions that I highlighted in the discussion that we had with our partners in Henrico was regarding the demand for water related to technology, data centers, plants, and so on. My understanding, our friends in Henrico, they've built quite a few data centers. There's like 16 in the area. I just heard that Google is building a large data center in Chesterfield, and we know that many more are on the horizon. And so I think for me and residents that I've spoken to, there is a keen interest to ensure that that everyday residents are not subsidizing the expenses of the corporations that are looking to make money. And so the question that I had asked is essentially to get an understanding of the demand that these existing and planned facilities are having on the water sources, and that we ensure that we have a rate system in place that ensures that that everyday residents are not subsidizing those costs. And so I'm wondering what type of work your team is doing to look at the projections and the usage to kind of get a sense of residential use versus the commercial use of this highly important resource.
Yes, one of the slides, I don't know if you want to bring it back up on the slide deck, it actually goes over what some of the capacities each of our wholesale purchasers have at their fingertips, I'm going to say. That does not break up I'll go to this slide. That does not break this up in disaggregate use. It doesn't break up into residential, commercial, industrial. What they do is they submit annually any type of change on their point of entries, which would be like projections for the next 10 years or the next year, depending on which the contract is structured. And then as long as they're staying below those max thresholds within their contract, they can pull and then use that for residential, commercial, or industrial. So for here, you look at Chesterfield, they have a max 32. Their average demand is 9.14. Each of their point of entries has a capacity associated with their point of entries. Henrico, same thing. They have a max capacity of 35. They have average day demand of 12.43. Each of their point of entries has a projected average day use and a max day over the next 10 years horizon. As part of the annual submittal process, they go through and evaluate each of those point of entries and tell us where they see that the demand is going to sit. And as long as it stays underneath the contractual values, we deem that acceptable.
Yeah. Mr. Donald, I'm wondering if you might also be able to expand on this, because I think that it will be, understanding whether or not one of the municipalities is at threat of going beyond the max that's allocated in the contract. I think what I'm trying to get to is ensuring that the way that we have structured rates is not incurring undue cost on residents. And this discussion is a national one. There are folks talking about not just water use, but an energy use, and our bills are going up, and there's no secret why that's happening. And so I'm wondering how we can provide our residents with increased sense of peace of mind to see that we are doing the homework to get to the root of what's happening. Because I've said it before, I'll say it again, I don't think it's coincidental that there's increased discussion about regional collaboration for water use in a moment in time when there's many corporate and commercial interests that are focused on having access to water.
Yeah. So one great question, and I think Mr. Morris did a really solid job at just kind of highlighting our environment. I think what you're asking me to do is also put some of that in layman's terms. And so I'd say, first of all, when we look at capacity, there is capacity within our system. And I know you mentioned making sure that we are, one, balancing the commercial needs as well as the needs of our residents, and really ensuring that our residents are not subsidizing this growth on the backs of those taxpayers in a way that's inequitable to what's coming from our commercial partners or our commercial customers who are more, have better ability to pay. Very clear on that, and you want to know about the work that's been done there. So the first thing is we kind of do everything under the frame of an affordability matrix. And I know that while Mr. Morris did not mention that to you, that's something that we start every conversation with. And so right now, our current rates and those that are projected, we start with that conversation about resident affordability, but not just resident affordability, customer affordability. That's the first thing that we do. The second thing that we're doing is really trying to project the growth. And a lot of our efforts are around maintaining the system and looking at our CIP to make sure that we are making the investments that will maintain our system, where maybe we have to do some upfront costs now. I think I mentioned that the plant was about 100 years old and things of that nature, but also making sure that we're not bearing that cost on the backs of our taxpayers more than we are our commercial customers like the ones that you mentioned in Henrico. And so that's an ongoing process. It's not something that we have just totally resolved, but we're looking at their water consumption. We're looking at, when we look at the capital investments that have to be made and how we invest in those across the system, and really including all of those things in the matrix. And so when we look at capacity though, because that's one of the first things that hits the system when you're talking about adding data centers, because they use a lot more water. And so we're looking at the capacity of the system. And so currently, based on the investments and the current commercial climate, we still have capacity. That's the first thing. I think the second thing that we're looking at is how we invest and who pays for those capital improvements throughout our system, and how do we make that equitable. Our residents and our non-commercial taxpayers cannot go without paying anything, but we also want to make sure that those commercial residential customers kick in equitably. We have started having some meetings with our council members. You're one, I think yours is coming up next, so we'll do a deeper dive into that because that analysis is not over and those decisions have not been made yet, but it is top of mind. That's a long-winded way of saying we're looking at it from every angle.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I don't know that it's so much about layman's terms, because if folks are doing their homework, people
That's right.
know a lot of pretty technical stuff as it pertains to water treatment plants here in Richmond. But, really just having access to more documentation, I think. This presentation wasn't easy for me to be prepared for the discussion in full transparency because there just was not a lot of meat on the bone. So it would be very helpful to get any talking points ahead of these meetings. And in addition to the one-on-one, I'm very much into wanting to govern in public. And so whatever documentation you have, I mean, I'd love to see a chart that shows commercial versus the residential projected use. And I'd love to see, our regional partners, if in the spirit of collaboration, that if they can provide the data they have as they've made commitments to Meta, to Google, to others who are building these centers, which again take in exponentially high use of our local resources, that we have a clear understanding of what that usage specifically is.
Yeah, well, listen, you're not going to get a fight out of me on transparency. So, I mean, I think we want to be as transparent as possible. But there are a couple of things that we have to balance when we talk about, our water systems and those assets. So one thing is water. It is all of our life source. And so making sure that we're able to protect that, and we have to be very thoughtful in how we release information about various locations and things in that nature. So we want to balance the two. I would also say where we are in the conversations is also pretty early. That's why there wasn't a ton of meat on the bone, because there's not a lot for you to bite into right now. But this is our first start of making sure that we keep everybody in the loop of what's going on. So first, we're having regional meetings. And if you just go to, is it the one with the timeline before this one? Or is it, I think it's after this. Yes. So if you look at this timeline, I know our audience can see it more than some of the council members because it's at your backs, but this is us being extraordinarily transparent. So one, we're letting you know that the ongoing process from January until we're looking at the review of the condition of the systems. That's that analysis that you were referencing. But then putting dates on things and letting folks know when things are happening, when they did happen, and when they're going to happen. So in August, that's when we started, looking at the budget and the rate development, which is why we've been having, although those meetings have been one-on-one and two-on-two, we're not hiding from anybody. We want the public to know we're thoughtfully looking at your rates and the budget and trying to make sure, again, that we're not bearing these changes on the backs of our taxpayers. If you look at the same time, we started meeting with our regional partners to make sure we have a 10-year CIP plan. And then later in August, when we had the regional tabletop exercise, that we also publicized and made sure that the public knew that those things were happening. Couldn't give the location and things of that nature, again, because you're talking about sensitive topics. And then from August to September is when we'll start really evaluating some of those assumptions that we learned with City Council. So I want to make sure we're being extremely transparent and letting folks know what's going on. But again, we're in the planning stages, information gathering, and so that bone doesn't have all the meat on it for you to take a bite out of just yet. But as it develops and we get that bone, a little bit more meat on it, we're going to let you and everybody else bite into it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilmember Abubakar?
That gets you, answer you.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a few questions about the assumptions that we are making around these rate models, specifically, that, and I think maybe Mr. Donald addressed this, but just like explicitly that the max use for each of these localities is not set to change based on a
No,
new model?
none of the capacities are set to change based off the assumptions.
Okay.
If that were to happen, we'd have to go and bring something before council to amend those contracts. So any contractual changes, you would see that before this gets incorporated into the rate model.
I think that's very reassuring. And then are some of these assumptions being based off of what we are hoping to get for state funding? I know that that is a big part of the calculus, at least in Mayor Vula's mind, for the redoing of these rate models.
Yes, that's one of the primary assumptions, varying the state contribution to see what impact it would have on the states. Just to give you a prime example, if we look at a 10-year CIP and there's I'm throwing a number out, this is not the official number by any means, but let's just say you throw out a $30 million per year assumption. Well, if you use $30 million that's coming in from the state, that goes into what you'd offset in your rates. You change that down to 15, that would be a different assumption, and then you'd have to increase your rates to offset some of those funds that didn't come from the state. And so several of the assumptions that we're running in the rate models we're basically changing the dials around to see what would have the impact on the rates and what's affordable for our residents, what's practical in an approach, what can we achieve in a 10-year CIP timeframe, and all of those are the knobs we're turning up and down to see what the impact would be to our ratepayers.
Including zero from the state?
Including zero from the state.
Okay, that's good to know. And do you see the state funding, and I don't know if this is a question for now or later, but do we see the state funding as being contingent on adjustments to our contracts with our regional partners, or even in practice, sort of adjusted roles in our regional partnerships?
It would be hard for me to kind of decipher what the state would put as strings for any type of grant money they would give. They can put a whole plethora of attachments that we would be obligated to get the funding.
Okay.
But it would be hard for me to say what those would be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Robertson?
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate the presentation, and I appreciate the one-on-one the previous meeting that we've had that gave a lot of detailed information as it relates to overall costs. One of the things that I am hopeful that we will be able to do upfront, as we are currently doing in putting this information out for the general public to have access to, is to better understand why or conditions that are warranting us to look at a stronger investment into our regional system, and also why we feel that now is a critical time in order to make those regional decisions, or those decisions as it relates to our city proper, as well as the benefit from a regional perspective. One of the things I don't want to leave in the minds of many people in the city of Richmond, and perhaps in the region as well, is that we have a system that is not capable of providing clean, safe water. And that one of the assurance that we made after the crisis in January of the failures of some systems that we had that created a major water crisis for the city and the region, was that with the repairs that were made, that our system is able and continue to be able to provide the capacity that is needed for the city as well as for the region. And we are doing so without any concerns as it relates to whether or not Richmond needs to fix the ability to deliver that water. So I want to be sure that as we put information out like this, we reinforce that message. I think the understanding that we have a 100-year-old system, there's significant improvements, significant advances that needs to be made to the system. to make sure that we are prepared to continue to provide the same quality of water, as well as be prepared for additional demands as those demands come online, so that when we let folk know that we are making significant improvements and the costs associated with that, they know what they're paying for. They know why it's wise to make that decision now, but they aren't concerned that the system is going to fall apart and we're going to be out of water because we are in such bad shape that we are not capable. People are still saying to me every day I talk to them, well, I hope Richmond get it together so they can provide clean water. Okay, so it's essential that we continue to make that message clear. And in doing so, to the degree that we believe that we are ready to be as transparent as to what exactly needs to be put into that 10-year plan, not only by the city, but regional partners and what they're planning to do to expand their capacity. It was made very clear to us with our surrounding counties where there's a lack of delivery capacity. So we want to be able to make sure that those issues are being taken care of too, because when we don't have the infrastructure in certain sectors of our regional counties, that created more of a problem for Richmond in the process of being accountable. So I don't know that I have a question specifically, but I am wanting to be very clear that it's so important that we be transparent with that message. Otherwise, we'll continue to make people feel like, we could break down tomorrow because we really are running a jalopy and we're not.
I'll just make a quick comment on that, council member. So first of all, thank you for those comments. I think you hit the nail on the head, and I see you and Councilmember Gibson both talked about that transparency and making sure that we highlight to the public, where we are as a system. First thing is, having a 100-year-old system is not a bad thing. So one, it shows that what we do here in Richmond is tried and true. And for 100 years, you've been providing clean drinking water for not only the city of Richmond, but really for the region. Because while we talk about it as these are our partners, they're also our customers. So Henrico is a customer, Chesterfield is a customer, Hanover is a customer, they're a customer of Richmond. So all of those places that have clean drinking water is because the city of Richmond is providing it. So that is one thing that we have to make sure that everybody knows. Second thing, though, is we do have a 100-year-old system. So what that means is it requires attention. It means that since it's 100 years old, we have to go in and check those pipes. We got to make sure that we replace and provide maintenance when it's time and when it's due. And the example from January is just one activity that can happen. When our residents turn that spigot on, they want to see some water come out on the other end, and they want to be able to put a cup up under it and be able to drink from it. And so we want to make sure that we're not only able to add that reliability, but we're able to ensure that every time they turn it on, the water comes on, and if it doesn't, we very quickly correct the problem. So this presentation, while asked for by the council, is just one opportunity for us to be able to show people where we are in the process and continuing what Richmond has been doing for over 100 years.
Thank you. Not so quick, Mr. Donald. Vice President Jordan.
Thank you. Yes. Well, it's great to be here today and not in January, and I appreciate the clarity of the slides, even if it is at that preliminary level. Just a couple of things. One, I think this conversation has really been focused on the regional growth, the regional capacity, but we're in the middle of our zoning refresh, and I think anyone up here who's been talking with their constituents knows folks want to make sure they're equally confident in the capacity for growth within Richmond boundaries. So that would be something I'd be interested in further discussion and from your department, whether that's at the Public Utilities Commission, back here at OD, or at GovOps. That's one point, so making sure we have the capacity as we continue to grow as a city. My other point would be, obviously, we're talking about the water facility, but we have other facilities under your portfolio. It's easy to think of you as our water guy, but you are our public utilities director, and I'm equally interested in our gas works, those rates, as well as CSO, et cetera. So I believe in the past, our director had given rates updates to GovOps in March. Given, I think, the implications of the budget cycle this year, I would imagine we would want to be having some of those conversations sooner rather than later, because this all stacks on top of each other. And we need to understand what water rate we're agreeing to in the context of those other rates. So just if you could comment a little bit on the schedule in your mind for developing all the rate models, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, most certainly. First, your hydraulic analysis. We are developing a hydraulic model that's in the final stages of being incorporated, and also staffing being trained on it. I'm happy to present on that on GovOps at any time. I can kind of show you the comprehensive review we do for our system as a whole. Give me a couple months to finalize some of the training and the presentation. I'll be happy to do that. The second component of that is the discussion on the rates as a whole. Stormwater, wastewater, water, gas, the electric utility, all that in combination. This request was to do as quickly as possible so we get the water budget out and the rate model out, so that we could do any type of state budget request. The other ones will be following shortly thereafter, so I expect over the next month and a half, we'll be solidifying the rates that we anticipate for all the other utilities. I'm happy to present that well in advance of the March discussion. You guys just tell me what dates, month that you want, and we can present on that.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Mr. Morris, just a quick question. The rate models that include state funding and zero state funding, when will those be forthcoming? Just rough approximate.
Yeah, so right now we're meeting with the council members to get feedback. Probably within the next week or two,
Okay.
we'll have those finalized. We do have to have some level of coordination with our regional partners, making
Right.
sure they're in agreement with whatever we're proposing. But after we get the feedback from City Council, we'll reach out to them directly, and then the CEO and the mayor have a conversation on pushing those out. But it should be within the next week or two.
Okay. And then just at some point, being able to get a status of our compliance with the findings relative to the state and our contractor at some point.
Yep.
Just like that.
So in general.
Not in, I mean, at some point, I just want
happy to do
make
it.
sure that's on our
Yeah,
future
no,
list.
completely on the horizon. We did do a comprehensive review. That's one of the components of the consent order for VDH.
Okay.
That summary is showing about 85% completed or addressed right now. And so
Okay.
that's all actions for any consent order, any inspection that was done on site. And that's including things that have already been incorporated into our CIP. So we may have already addressed the items, but we haven't gotten to it in the CIP. But I'll happy to present on that in any future meeting that you would like.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe you've entertained our questions. Want to say thank you, Mr. Morris. Thank you, Mr. Donald, and look forward to the upcoming updates and reports. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
your work and progress to date.
All right. Thank you, council members.
Okay. Madam Clerk, we're going to move on to the docket at this point, and the first item will be resolution. Huh? Yes. I'm sorry, not resolution, but ordinance 2025-188 relative to the grim matter and all acts. Once that's read in the administration, to have any comment there.
The first paper for consideration is item 2, ordinance number 2025-188, and that's to amend the FY26 special fund budget by transferring $5.8 million from the delinquent tax sales special fund, and to amend the FY26 general fund budget by 1, creating a new line item in the outside agencies and central appropriations agency called restitution payments, and 2, appropriating such transferred funds to such new line item for the purpose of providing funding for a restitution payment pursuant to Virginia Code Section 8.01-195.13. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With the administration, and I'm not sure, Mr. Donald, or if this is, would like to do an intro of this.
Well, hello again. All righty. Well, not a lot of comments. I would just really refer the council back to provided 3 memorandums on this matter, and I would just kind of highlight some of the things for the edification of the public of why the recommendation from the administration has come the way it is. I think the first thing is when we look at the funding source for the restitution payment, looking at the fund that I've recommended to the council is determined to be the most appropriate and sustainable funding source, mainly to protect those general fund and reserves. I think when we look at that, just as we talked about in the last conversation, want to make sure that we're not making decisions that on the backs of our taxpayers. And so when looking at the city of Richmond's fiscal policy, it's kind of clear on what it says. You know, fund balance may only be used in cases of extraordinary hardship and only after other reserves are exhausted. In addition to that, contingency reserves may only be accessed for catastrophic or unforeseen events. Given these restrictions, reserves and fund balance would not be the appropriate place for this observation. This allocation. Also, when I was looking at the fiscal context of the delinquent tax special fund, I think there is some great opportunity there to be able to not only, use it for this purpose, but I think really make sure we match the letter of the law, and not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law when it comes to affordable housing. This is my first time being able to come before you, but you'll get tired of hearing me say this. Affordable housing is my love language. It's one of the things that I think is the most important thing that we can fund as a part of the appropriate growth for Richmond, to make sure folks are able to age in place, make sure that Richmonders have opportunities to have safe and affordable housing, and then making sure that those who have an interest to contributing to our community have an opportunity to do so. And so in looking again at this fund and the various opportunities, one, we have to make sure that we meet the state required or meet our state requirements. So I want to make sure that we're able to do that, but also make sure that when we look at this fund, we're able to deliver and utilize it for delivering on affordable housing. It has some great context and conversation. Got a couple of history lessons from Madam Council Member Robertson on, what has and has not been done and what those opportunities are, which I personally take to heart and make sure we want to provide opportunities for all of our residents, but we also have a requirement, a state level requirement that we must meet. And so I believe that I've given you a strong recommendation that will do both, because I think in Richmond we can both chew gum and walk at the same time. And so this part, I believe, is the chewing gum, and then making sure that we use those funds towards affordable housing and making sure that they're appropriately done is the walk-in. So I'll pause there and take any questions that you might have or alternate suggestions.
Mr. Donald, thank you. That will be the introduction. Don't leave.
Because
after the public hearing, we will probably have, I'm pretty sure, more questions for you.
Yes,
okay?
ma'am.
Thank you.
All righty.
At this time, we will hold a public hearing on this legislation. Are there persons present who wish to speak in opposition to this paper? If you would come forward.
My name's Steve Salzberg. I'm a resident of the 1st District in the city. I'm a very proud resident here and happy to be living in the city. I'm a little disturbed that the law isn't being followed. I'm sure you are unhappy about that as well. I mean, the sale of tax delinquent property that is now under consideration has always supposed to have been going to the affordable housing, and yet it wasn't. Risks sort of tried to inquire, and we discovered that they're not sure where that money is. Now they know where the money is. And the retired tax abatement dollars, they're special funds that's supposed to go there. The city has been breaking the law for a long time. And I can't imagine that sits well with any of you, because there's laws that you passed. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for serving the city.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam President.
Yes, Councilwoman Trammell?
Can you tell me what his name was? We didn't hear his name. What's your name?
Would you, would you give your full name again, please?
You need my name again? Is that what? Stephen Salzberg, S-A-L-T-Z-B-E-R-G.
Thank you, Mr. Salzberg. Are there other persons present desirous of speaking in opposition to this paper? Okay. Seeing none, are there persons present desirous of speaking in favor of this paper? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Bring it back to council for discussion. And I think I see you, Councilmember Gibson was first up.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the comments shared by Mr. Salzberg, and I think that there's two different issues on the table. One is this matter and paying a person who was wrongfully convicted, and we certainly have to address that significant wrong that was made. One of many, I'm sure. The other is the matter of upholding our own laws, and I think that as a body we certainly have to address that, because it doesn't feel good to be elected, go through all the trouble of writing policy and have it essentially not be followed. I'm not positive what's the root cause of this issue. I appreciated the article that was published in the Richmonder on this topic, exploring the reality of that law. One of the things highlighted is the language in the law, which is it says shall, and I think that this is something that the body should be looking at holistically with expedience, because we have in our laws, in our city code, the word shall is included over 3,000 times. And if including the word shall means that essentially all of this is optional, I don't know what we're doing. So it should be a priority to work with our legal counsel to revise the language across the board, but certainly with this particular policy. Same with the language of subject to appropriation, and we'll be talking about our budget process later, I think, right? But it's if ultimately City Hall provides us, or the administration, the mayor provides us with a budget where the funds are not appropriated, we have no time to make changes, no place to make changes from. Essentially, it's ensuring that these things are not going to be followed from the get-go. So all of these things are overlap. I just want to express, if there are other colleagues that are eager to make changes to this policy to ensure that we are no longer legislating things that will essentially just become optional. I would love to patron that work with anyone who's looking to do that. I'm exploring this myself. I think that the areas in the code that we need to be looking at with more scrutiny are both the section dealing with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but also the section regarding the monthly financial synopsises that we receive. The language in that section is specific to the general fund, and clearly we have many enterprise funds and other funds where money is both received and spent, and I think that it is critical that we as a body and the public have visibility on a much broader level, because it's simply, we talk about being short on funds, but when there's $9 million sitting in a cushion somewhere, something's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gibson. Councilmember Robertson?
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very regretful that the Grimm and his family have had to endure all of these years of injustice. And the award that is being made by both the state and the city is not reflective of the challenge and the burden that we have placed on this person as well as his family and our community. There is nothing more stressful to think that our justice system is not operating at a level of accountability and efficiency, that no one should be serving any time in jail for a crime that we have not proven that they are guilty of. So I commend Mr. Grimm and his family for their continued effort to bring justice to light. And certainly, I would hope that if there's anyone that's sitting in jail that are not guilty of the charge that they're there for, I would hope that they would be encouraged to fight for justice, and that the resources are provided to them to make that possible. Having said that, I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm not absolutely comfortable that the charge and the legislative changes that were made in this case that holds the city equally accountable at the same level of the state, when obviously the obligation and the responsibility of finding Mr. Gibbs not guilty of a crime that he has served time for did not rest at the city's doorstep to the degree that the changes in the law. And I do think that the city of Richmond needs to look at that very carefully, because the time frame that we were allowed to be responsive to the charge that the state placed on us in a short period of time at $5.8 million really, without this, in my decision, my determination, inappropriate use of legislated use of these dollars being used, we would not, if according to what we are told, there is no other source. So what would be our choice if we stayed within the legal boundaries of what we obligated the money for? And if we can't find anything else, what choice does the state, what's the burden that the state is sending across the street to us with a short notice? I think that's a legislative agenda that needs to be critically taken into advisement, because as some of our colleagues have said, this may not be the first. And the next one, if we can't find legitimate funding Are we going to continue robbing legislated funding from what source, and how do we make that decision? And how do we be responsive to a state mandate that also comes with a threat of discontinuing funds that we are entitled to? So, there's a whole lot of law going on in here that I think is being stretched and that needs to be checked. And I'm looking at our attorney, and I'm asking the president of this council, that we may need to have a whole lot more task forces take a lot of time. And I want to thank Ms. Jordan and all of our staff, because we've spent a whole lot of time that we were supposed to be on vacation working on doing budget revision, and it was worth every minute of the time that we invested. But if we don't do other task forces of the same nature, we're going to find ourselves being subjected to glitches in legislation that we wrote, that we adopted, that we thought was legally sound, that now can be challenged by our own administration as to whether or not glitches prevent them from carrying it out. These are real problems. They are really deep problems, and I'll be honest with you. I have convinced myself, after writing probably more emails in the last 2 weeks on one subject matter than I've ever done in the 20 years that I've served on this council. And I don't feel that I have made any progress in bringing to attention that we as a city have an obligation to carry out our own legislation, and if there's a glitch in it, then darn it, fix it. Because the mission and the purpose at hand is bigger than allowing a glitch that we have asked over and over and over and over again 1,000 times. How do we make this legislation real and active? And to this date, just in the last few weeks, all of a sudden we were able to find this money. All of a sudden, we have had a Davenport report that have told us several years ago, if we'd followed this law, we would have $27 million plus I'll just go with the 7 since we were willing to allow ourselves to say up to 1,000 out of the delinquent sales tax, because we were told there were only about $1 million and some in there. So, we were trying to be sensible with ourselves, only to find out that during a period of time that we had put a moratorium on sales and a lot of other things that I don't quite understand, that dollar amount moved from less than $2 million to $9 million. And today, we can find it, and we can ignore the legislation that mandated where it was to go and reappropriate it. And this is not the first time that we have done this. The reality is the funding that's supposed to be going to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from the real estate abatement roll-off, the sale of delinquent properties, and the funding that we are getting out of our issuing of bonds, none of them, and the money that we got in regards to COVID, none of them have been appropriated accurately to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And this is not a new conversation. This conversation has been had over and over and over again. But when it's time for us to find a way to move those monies to something that we want, that we feel we need to spend it on, we find the money. Trust between our attorney, giving us legislation that can be enforced, our administration executing legislation that has been passed by this council, and the council adopting legislation that we think is legal and can be enforced, we are not going to be a city that is divided between our legal department, our administration, and our legislative body. And that's what is troubling me just as bad as a crisis of housing. And our housing crisis is huge, and it's worse. For each one of my colleagues, when you get your map from the assessor's office today, it will show you, and Mr. Donald, please set up a meeting with him, because you need, I want you to see this. Okay. Well, I'm interested in knowing what you think about it, because what I'm looking at, if we continue to not put money into affordable housing, there will be no opportunity for anyone in this city or anyone working for this city. If we're not paying them a salary of a minimum of $250,000 a year, they will not be able to live in the city of Richmond. That is the devastating truth of what affordable housing means in this city. And I cannot, in my consciousness, move one penny. One penny. We got to take care of the message, the unfortunate inconsideration of the city's fiscal status and the lack of the state meeting its obligation and paying us even what's due to us in lieu of taxes. The other deal that we just had, that $50 million we should have gotten from the state, just ignore it. To send us a 30-day mandate, but even worse, I'll say to the administration, I'll say to every citizen, I'll say to everybody who's willing to develop affordable housing, I'm disappointed that only Mr. Salzberg is down here to speak against this paper. And I'm really disappointed that I'm the only one that has spent weeks and weeks and weeks writing lots and lots of emails and, like Mr. Donald said, doing a lot of education for this young man who I believe can help us deal with our affordable housing. I do. And I want to say that up front. I believe we just need to give him the opportunity to do so. But I will say to him also, if you're going to take money out of what is legislated, been put in place, that ain't going to work. That's not going to work. And if we can't have a dedicated source of revenue that we can depend on, Richmond is not going to be a city that 90% of our employees are going to be able to live. And that is just the factual truth. And I'm going to vote against this paper. I'm going to vote against any one penny that is moved from where it has been appropriated for affordable housing, and I can be the only voter. I can be the only one that writes the email. I'm going to continue to do it. Richmond has given away multi-million dollars to subsidize wealthy developers and homeowners for many, many years, from 1990. We put this legislation in, Mr. Donald, as a justice legislation for the injustice that was done for years to give up tax dollars, multi-million dollars of them, with not one affordable housing unit mandate. We put this legislation in to bring about justice. And justice for Mr. Graham family is the right thing to do. And justice for fair housing and affordable housing in the city of Richmond, if we care about an inclusive community that reflects all of our taxpayers, must be done. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. Mr. Donald, were you poised to, and then Councilmember Trammell, can I come to you after comment?
Yeah, I was going to highlight a couple of things because I heard the commentary from Councilmember Gibson as well as Councilmember Robertson. I want to just provide some clarity and make sure we get some of those things on the record. One, when looking, now I'm not a lawyer and we got a doggone good one, but when we say shall, it typically signifies a mandatory action. I don't think the shall in there is actually where the challenge is. It's more so, you know, they're not even the challenge, it's more so on the flexibility, and I don't want to take away the context around COVID. We're through it now, and we often forget what occurred during COVID, but during that time, we had ARPA funding and some other funding that we utilized, and so I'm not here to protect the past administration. I was brought on by the Avula administration and my 9 council members, and so the composition and everything was different back then, but we have to provide some context. Because I do also want to say that that $9.1 million was not just sitting there. So I'll give you a little bit, and I learned some of this through research. When you sent me a couple of messages, I wanted to make sure we were doing the right thing, and I can stand by my recommendation. So FY20, 3.1 million, FY21, 5.9, FY22, 5.3, FY23, 7.0, 2024, 8.8, and current year unaudited is about 9.1 million. So the first thing is it's the time value of money. And so the amounts grow because of what the program allows people to do. Even though the program was defunct, it was still attaining resources because of what I'm going to highlight for you now. And then I'll kind of answer some of those questions that you had. Because I don't think it's a robbery of the actual fund. It's more so how the fund operates. And we actually find ourselves in an opportune position because since it's been closed and it has been collecting money, we now have a source when we did not for Grimm. So when a property is sold at auction, taxes and fees are paid first, and any surplus is available to the former owner for up to 2 years. If unclaimed, the city attorney may recover the funds for the city special fund. So one thing is those fees coming in at first is one portion of the funding, but then there are additional funds that can come into that fund. During COVID, sales of occupied properties were suspended, though unoccupied property sales continued. Proceeds and aged-out surplus deposits from prior years drove the growth in the tax special fund between FY23 and FY25. So it's not that, you know, we were not looking at that fund or it was laying dormant and people putting funds into it, but those things were already on the rolls and the activities were being carried out. In addition to that, I know we talked about, you know, administering that program. So a couple of things to think about when you talk about the COVID environment, because we had to make sure that the resources that we had in the city, which are finite, they are not infinite, and I know this council knows that better than most. We had to make sure that our residents received all types of services that we may not have thought of before, and affordable housing is one of them, but for the first time ever, without dedicated funding sources, or if we didn't have a dedicated funding source, the feds brought down in direct payments to the city, which never happens, the opportunity to have more resources that can be utilized for a variety of reasons, which Richmond took full advantage of. So one thing just to highlight, when we talk about not giving money to affordable housing, about $6.2 million in the general fund in between FY 2020 and FY 22, this time frame that is in question, went to affordable housing. In addition to that, $44 million in ARPA funding also went towards affordable housing, and $20 million in GEO bonds, and the offsets from those have gone into the CIP. And so there have been, I think you've done actually a really strong job of allocating funding to affordable housing when there are not a lot of resources. What you basically did is say, hey, I've got $100 in this hand that can be used for everything in the budget, but somebody else is going to give me an additional $100. I'm going to put those together and I'm going to allocate those funds to all of the ills of the city. So you looked at the legislation and you were able to both chew gum and walk at the same time. You did affordable housing, you put money into your public safety, you put money into your frontline workers. All of these things are important and vital, and you have to be able to do it all with a very limited amount of resources. And the way that the legislation is written, it actually allowed you to do that. Now, there are some things that can be strengthened, and I think we have to look at that and kind of come up with the right process for it. But because of how the legislation is written, you were able to use those one-time funds for other places to offset the cost for affordable housing and other things. And it also allowed you to accrue these funds that we can now pay a debt that we were not expecting to pay. So when you look at this process, it said you can use $0 to $1 million. That means you can put nothing in, or you can put up to $1 million in based on appropriations. What that means is that when you look at your entire budget, if I give you $50 million that can be utilized for affordable housing at a time where you had $0 to $1 million, what the council opted to do is to appropriate that $44 million. And that $1 million you did not appropriate, or you did not appropriate it in that way, from what I can tell from seeing those old budgets. I'm not necessarily, I don't think I would call that a crisis or a robbery or anything of that nature. I think you made a choice in the midst of crisis during the COVID pandemic. I think I just wanted to highlight that. But there are some other things to consider, and I'll close with this. As we look at the budget, we've got a lot of competing priorities. So you heard from Mr. Morris today about water. In January, your water was shut down and people couldn't turn that spigot on, and they were not guaranteed to have clean water. We've got to make sure that that's resolved. In addition to that, when you look at the fire department and you look at, we had the SAFER grant where we brought on those additional employees to be able to provide a certain level of firefighters. I think off the top of my head, we were at 508, 510. I've only been here a month, so I might be off 2 or 3. But when you look at even your family crisis funding, that was one-time funding that you provided through ARPA and some of those other activities, which is, something heroic and supportive for our community. We've got to figure out how to pay for that if we're going to continue moving that forward. Even gun violence prevention, something that, in this community is something that's really important, but our philosophy might be a little bit different than that of the state. So there are a variety of competing priorities, not just affordable housing. So I want to beat that drum, because for me, you got public safety number one, because people have to feel and be safe, and then right behind it or somewhere along with it is making sure people have affordable homes. But we also have to look at everything else and give a little bit of context. And I guess that's just what I would close with, is that we're talking about something that occurred during the COVID era, and you had an influx of money that you did not have before. And so it appears on paper that the decision that you made is to utilize those one-time sources to be able to fund affordable housing and all of the other ills that you had, and then to keep the lights on and keep the order of business moving forward, you used your general fund. And so I'll close with that and continue to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. There will be more questions. Councilmember Trammell.
Thank you. I think City Council is getting blamed for this, and I want to just try to clear it up, because it wasn't City Council that passed this. It was a delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Sullivan, Democrat, who wrote the laws saying that localities had to match what the state pays to wrongfully convicted people. So it wasn't us that did this, and it really wasn't Youngkin. He just made sure that he followed the law, what the delegate did from Fairfax. Also, I'm glad that Youngkin has made us do this, because it's opened up a can of worms. It's really brought us now in a conversation about affordable housing, about the trust fund. And I want to say that I don't like that, and I wish Sabrina Joy Hogg was here and Sheila White so they could answer, because I remember hearing that Ellen and Cynthia was in the office with her and with Sheila, and she was telling us that, well, she was telling them that we need to go after the money that's owed in back taxes and all. Ellen and Cynthia said, no, you're not going to do that. We can't do that. And how much money is owed with that? But it was stop. Let me just go there. So, and I know I've heard Sabrina stand up here and say that we're not in a business just to give money away. You know, people have to pay. And if they owe, they should pay what they owe. Even if they get on a payment plan. The city doesn't go and just throw you out your house. They give you every opportunity there is to try to pay your back taxes. And I'm sick and tired of hearing about all these millionaires. Do you know what millionaires pay? They don't, they have to pay their fair share. And talk about the city attorney, well, she's only, giving us the advice that she's supposed to give us, the truth. And that's what she's done here. I just think it's wrong to have a new CAO that comes up here and answers all the emails. And I'm glad you said, Ellen, that you gave out more and more emails, because you probably did. I picked up the phone and I called and said, hey, I fully don't understand after reading this email, that email, this email, that email. Can you please explain this to me? And I think it was what? You were supposed to be going to dinner with your family, and you stopped and said, let me call Councilwoman Trammell so I can try to iron this out so she'll know what we're talking about. How much money was in that Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Was it $6 million? Was it $9 million? And we don't get I don't get an update on it. I don't know how the money's being spent, and I don't know half of these daggone people that's on this board. And who's in charge of this board? I guess the council person is. And for you to have you want that money, if we get the 5.8 million, which we should, because we've been told to do this, and we need to do this, because the mayor has did exactly what the governor told us to do, and we're here tonight to vote on this, to give him the money. Where does that other money go? Do we keep it, or does it go into this trust fund? How much money is in that trust fund, Affordable Housing Trust Fund? And like I said, when you got a CAO and Sheila White that was in charge of finance that wants to go after the money that's owed, because to me, if it's 30 million, 50 million, we sure in the hell could use that money for a lot of things, And then I'm hearing today, I think Ellen spoke about it, about when people rehab their homes. Odie, I might need you to help me with this. If you rehab your home, do you get 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%? Where does that go? Does that go to the affordable? Where does it go? Does it go to the general fund? Does it go to this trust fund? I wanted the guy, I texted him, but he didn't answer me back. Maryland, what's his? Yeah, the tax abatement. Because there's two separate. There's one for business, there's one for homeowners that want to rehab their homes. They have to qualify. But there's two. There's not just, it's just not homeowners, it's businesses too that can qualify for this. So where does all that money go? I mean, she said it's supposed to go to Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Mr. Donald, if you don't have that information, can we get that so that we can?
That's fine. You can call me.
Okay.
You can call me and tell me. I'm just thinking that, I'm glad this has finally come up. And I'm glad that I'm not probably the only one that's sitting here wondering, what is this? How is this going? Where does all this money go? If it was it 6 million? Was it 9 million? And now we do know that it's probably 9 million, because 5.8 is going there. And I want to make sure that that other million or 3 million, whatever it is, doesn't go to this affordable, does not go there. It goes back to the general fund or whatever. And also, come down here, Rick. This has been printed. Pages and pages, probably 200 pages.
is that?
Y'all see this? People that owe. And we're hurting for money? Really? Really? I have all of it. And believe me, you'll be shocked when you see some of the damn names on here. And I think it's a shame that you got 2 council members that would go into an office with the CAO and with the previous CAO and Sheila White, Sabrina and Sheila, and tell them not to do their job. Their job was
Ms.
to go.
Trammell,
Their
Ms.
job.
Trammell,
I knew you were going to
Ms.
shut me up.
Trammell, I am not shutting you up. You just need to be accurate in your conveyance.
Because you were in there
I'm
too.
not-
You were in
I'm
there.
not-
You were in that office too.
I'm just saying you need to be accurate in your
Are you saying that you were not in
conveyance.
that office?
You
Are
need to
you
be
saying you
accurate
were
in
not-
your conveyance,
What?
period. Do you have any more questions?
Was that a question?
Do you have any more questions relative to this paper and Mr.
You got
Donald?
hot when I just showed what I have.
Okay.
Damn it, you got mad over this. Why are you mad over this?
I don't
This is
know what
something
you're
that should be
talking
shared
about,
with
but
everybody.
okay.
This is something that Sheila and Sabrina was going after, and you stopped it. You and Ellen told her not to do it. And I
Right,
remember.
okay. Any
This
other
is very
questions?
important.
Do you have other questions?
This conversation's not over, it's all I can tell you.
Well,
It's
that's
not
good.
over. You daggone
It
right
needs
it's
to
not.
be
And I'm sick
accurate.
and tired of you because you're the president of council, and I wished I had the duties that I had with me earlier. I think it's on my desk. You don't run us. You don't tell me what to do. I've got
I'm not
25
telling you
years
what
of
to do.
service here. 25. How many do you have?
Absolutely. Far less.
I'm for the people. Are you for the people?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Really? Well, you don't show it.
Well, that's what you say.
That's
So
what
in
what I know.
Yes, okay.
That's what I know.
Let me tell
'Cause if
you
you
what we're
were-
not going to do. If you have more questions relative to this paper, we're going to address them. Any
You
other
address them.
items, we will have
Well,
to
you're not
address
going to sit,
otherwise.
I'm not going to sit in this seat and have a previous CAO and the previous finance person be put down and say that I have that email. And that's why I asked, and I'm not going to have, because he is new, he's here, you got 3 new council members here that are not on board with all of this because they're new too. And also you got a new mayor that's not on board with all of this. And you're not going to sit here and say he's not doing his job. He just gave a damn presentation right there that I would like to have what he just said in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point,
Madam
Ms.
Chair.
I think, Ms. Abubakar, were you?
I did.
Okay, and then I'll come back to Councilwoman Lynch. I'm trying to make sure everybody gets in, and then back to you, Councilwoman Robertson.
Thank you.
Sure. I want to reiterate my colleague's sentiment that I don't think that any of us are speaking about necessarily the merits of restitution for Mr. Grimm. I think that I do agree with her that the legislation has unintended consequences that we are now suffering, and I hope that our new government relations team will work with our colleagues across the street to ensure that there is adjustments to this legislation so that this is not the precedent that we are setting, but rather a very expensive learning opportunity for us. I want to go back to a few things because I think it's important as we talk about, and Councilwoman Robertson said this, I think, so eloquently, that at the crux of the matter is this idea of an administration, a council, attorney's office, and making sure that we are truly singing from the same sheet of music. Mr. Donald, I understand that you were not here, during this last budget cycle, so I do not hold this against you, but I think words matter, so I'm going to say this. You said you did not appropriate, which I think subtly and maybe unintentionally conveys that the onus is entirely on this legislative body to appropriate that. What I have learned in my one budget session is that council has very little to do with appropriations in reality. It is the administration who creates and proposes the budget and then leaves us with very little wiggle room to make amendments. And again, in the case of this year, it was less than $2 million of wiggle room. Certainly not, if you had told me that there was $9 million hiding in a pot, I think we could have done some really incredible things as a legislative body. But so I want to name that, because I think, and again, this is not a whodunit, you're new, we're new. But again, if we're going to move forward, then we need to use the right linguistics, and you did not appropriate that is a misleading statement. The mayor and the administration appropriated, or the previous administration appropriated, and we essentially affirmed that. My question, and again, you will not know this necessarily, but maybe others in this room, it's not entirely a new administration. Where was this $9.1 million in March? Because in March, we had many people that were advocating for affordable housing and for the trust fund, and literally lining up past the seats, begging for us to follow the letter of the law, and we were essentially hamstrung, again, because we did not appropriate the budget. The administration appropriated the budget, and the administration told us there was not $9.1 million for allocated for this fund. I will tell you right now, if I had known, I would have wholeheartedly put in a funding request for funding the Affordable Trust Housing Fund. So I guess as we move forward, I would love it for this administration to truly see council as a partner in legislating budgetary matters, and that means disclosing where you found $9.1 million in couch cushions. Like, that's what it feels like, and yet we're about to go into a new budget cycle, and so we need to set that tone moving forward. So I don't know if there's a question. It's more of just a statement. I would love for you to react. Again, not a commentary on you.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing I would do is say, you was intentional, but I don't want you to take it out of context. When I said you, I was referring to the entire city. That includes the mayor and council. And I say that intentionally because it becomes we as of July 9th. And while I report directly to the mayor, I've been pretty clear and extremely transparent. And what you'll hear from our budget task force, the response is about us doing it more collaboratively. So I don't want to spill their lemonade before you get a chance to drink it, but the key is making sure that we do things together. All of this, the mayor's on this side, the council's on that side. I heard somebody mention the lawyer. All one team, all Team Richmond. We fail, we fail together, we succeed together, because those 230,000 are dependent on all of us. And when I was saying you, I was actually alluding to the good decision that you have made. You don't have to take credit for it, but I think if you have finite resources and you're looking at how you're going to allocate your funding, and I'll make sure to repeat that, you had one-time sources where you were able to invest more in affordable housing than you had ever done before, is what you had done. I can't take credit for it now. If you want me to, I'll put it on my resume. I got enough bullets, but I'll add that one to it because I think it's an important one. You allocated a ton of money to affordable housing, and the law that was written said you could do 0 to 1 million. Instead, you allocated 72.2 over a period of time. And so you utilized those one-time funds to do that. That's what I meant with you. And then on the second piece that you mentioned, I fully agree with you. One, it wasn't found in couch cushions. It was grown over time because of how people are able, and I gave a little bit of information there. I'll make sure to send it out to all of the council so that you actually have that written information and can refer to it. But when it comes to the budget, our plan that we have collectively come up with together is that, one, we kick the budget off. Well, I shouldn't do that, right? Let me wait until we get to that point. But the key is that we want to do, even though it's the mayor who is going to be presenting the budget, we want eyes to be on it in advance. Number one, our citizens, to make sure they have a say before that budget comes to you. And then number two, making sure that the council both sees and is up to date throughout the process. So you'll hear about that later from the budget task force, but you was not meant at you in a negative way. You is, I think y'all actually did something that was very smart and frugal, which is using all of your resources. That was what I was alluding to.
So I'm assuming that moving forward, things like these kind of fund balances will be fully transparent for council and will be a part of our deliberations around the budget.
Fully the intent. So this is going to be my first budget with y'all. I budget much different than it appears you have in the past, but I think, again, I want to allow the budget task force to be able to speak, because they actually have I guess I'm a part of that task force. We have the plan together, but I don't want to get in front of it, but it is to be collaborative from the very beginning. So.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Breton has not spoken, so I'm going to punt, and then Ms. Robertson, I'll come back to you.
And Madam Chair, just so you know, Ms. Lynch was waiting to speak as well online.
Okay, I'll come to her after.
Okay. Well, I wanted to agree about and highlight the concerns that this is uncovering about transparency in our budget process, and our issue with not always enforcing the laws that we pass. And it happens not just in this case, but in all types of other legislation that we pass around, publishing our check registry or enforcing short-term rentals. I mean, it goes on and on. In various ones, you can be forgiven sometimes, and depending on the size, you cannot. So this is a pretty large one about legislating a large dollar amount and then not meeting the letter of the law. It's a serious concern. Though I also want, and so moving forward, we absolutely, speaking of some of the things I've heard here, need to make sure that we are not passing and leaving legislation on the books that we have no intention of following, right? If that's the case, we should revise it to what we truly intend to do so that we can hold ourselves to an actual attainable goal. So that's very important. I think that should probably be the story here. I think what I worry is that there's going to be a story about how we pay this restitution by taking it from affordable housing, and I don't think anyone is saying that, but I don't believe that's what is happening here. We have over the past couple of years, for the reasons that CIO Mr. Donald has explained, made investments in affordable housing through different mechanisms other than the legislated ones. And as I said, there are problems with that method, and there are serious problems that we need to address. And we also have, we seriously need to make sure that we are doing a better job of making a more reliable funding stream for affordable housing because of the history of injustices that have led to our affordability crisis and the growing problems that we have. I believe that people might simplify the story to say that we robbed affordable housing to pay this restitution, and that's not the case. I think what the story here is that we have uncovered a problem with opaqueness in our budget process, we've uncovered a problem with enforcing our legislation, and we've uncovered a problem with making sure we have enough reliability in our funding stream for affordable housing.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lynch.
Hey, can you hear me?
Okay, Councilwoman Lynch and Mr. Donald, then after Councilwoman Robertson, we're going to come back to.
Yeah, very, very, I echo all the sentiments of my colleagues. It's, first, foremost, horrible, and tragic situation for Mr. Grimm, and as some of our colleagues highlighted, many others who probably shared this unfortunate circumstance, and absolutely wholeheartedly full stop believe in justice for them and their families, and have so much empathy for everything that they have gone through. Frustrated that we did not catch this legislation and kind of put all of the pieces together until later. I share that frustration certainly with our I'm sure the rest of you all and, some of our other colleagues in other cities that may be facing, similar, bills that they now have that they're grappling with. I hope that we can, and this is, I guess, my ask of this body is to consider putting, on our legislative priorities, putting some friendly amendments in for this legislation to make it more palatable for all municipalities, particularly those that are impacted probably disproportionately by this legislation. And those two friendly suggestions are, one, that we create a state risk pool that municipalities can pay into. Part of the challenge with this legislation is that it hit us out of nowhere. It is a liability for us, and unfortunately, it is not covered under our insurance. And I understand that it's other insurance brokers that insure municipalities and localities across Commonwealth would be positioned similar. So I think consideration of a state risk pool would be helpful. And two, if these types of, and I think Councilmember Aberbacher, you mentioned this, but if these types of pieces of legislation are passed, that there is a year effective date. In other words, if the bills pass and are signed into law in April, a locality should not be responsible in July 1st to make that payment when they have not contemplated it into their own general fund budget. So some grace on the payment period, I think, would be helpful. All that to say, I think with those two suggestions, it would probably have been or will be a more palatable piece of legislation, and hope that we can put that on set our sights on that for our legislative agenda.
Thank you, Councilwoman Lynch. Councilwoman Robertson?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not going to belabor this, but I do want to make a few corrections or clarifications. Number one, yes, we did pass the legislation. We passed it for the purpose of identifying two dedicated sources of revenues for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. In order to build a sustainable volume of affordable housing to prevent us being in a crisis, first of all, and secondly, to get us out of a crisis, there has to be sustainable, dedicated sources of revenue. Housing doesn't happen in a month's time. Any significant housing development is a pipeline, a minimum of 2 years, and easily 3 to 5 years by the time you put together all of the funding that is necessary. What our Affordable Housing Trust Fund does, and Madam Chair, I want to request, and we will make sure that the council gets at least a biannual detailed report on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and all of the development that takes place. I think we've been doing a lot of that, but we'll make sure we clarify that and make sure that's available. But the only way Richmond's investment in our Affordable Housing Trust Fund provides leverage gap financing, which is a small part of the total cost, but it is significant in the weight that it placed on any other application of other sources of funding that is 90% of the budget for the housing development. So it is essential that we have not just speak to one-time funding. One-time funding was at the expense of a lot of people losing their lives. And in this case, the majority of those people that lost their lives were minorities and they were low-income families. Majority, not solely. So we got one-time funding, but we don't live off a one-time source of fundings. And yes, we made some critical decisions, but we made those decisions without acknowledging the legislation that was on the book that required what we were to do with the funds that were designated for that source. And if the legislation is not going to be passed, just like this legislation that's before us right now, if the legislation says up to $1 million, which is problematic, because like Mr. Donald said, if you do a half a penny, it's up to. I don't think that was the purpose of that language, and none of us wrote that language except to be sensitive to not knowing what the budget was. Reporting on the carrying out of legislation is something, Madam President, we're going to have to do a better job at, because we have asked over and over and over again for a status report on the roll-off, for the tax rehab. Still haven't gotten that from the administration, Mr. Donald, so I'm hoping that that's something we'll work on as well. Secondly, we have asked if there's glitches in this legislation, what is it that we need to fix so that administration can send us an appropriation with it? We have not gotten that yet. Ms. Attorney, I'm hoping that you'll be able to help us out with that. If this legislation is not going to be carried out, I do not need to be in a position, because when anybody have a problem with affordable housing in the city of Richmond, I always going to be one that get a call, always. If this legislation is not enforceable, then we need to write new legislation with dedicated sources of revenue that can be enforced, does not have any provision in it that the administration doesn't have to carry it out unless we take action, and we can't take action unless they bring us action. We can do better. We just got to do better. We got to figure out a way to make sure that what we do works for the administration, what the attorney helps us with works for us, and work for them. This is one city dealing with the same taxpayers' dollars. We're not 3 different cities. We're one. And so when there's room for us to improve, we should collectively look for those means to do so, not take advantage of an opportunity to do something different than the intention of the legislation that was passed. And that's what I'm saying. As long as this legislation is on the books, every citizen that I speak to expects the roll-off dollars to be put in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. They expect that any proceeds, excluding expenses and all of those things, from the sale of delinquent tax properties, not someone not paying their taxes, the sale of delinquent taxpayers, $1 million, and we're going to change the up to. We'll just put the $1 million in it. Matter of fact, we may even put more than that in it. We'll have to get it passed, of course, but we expect that money to go into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as a dedicated, reliable source of money that we can create the pipeline that we need to continue the development of housing in the city of Richmond. And Mr. Donald, we all walked in your path when we were first elected. We inherit what we got. And so we are where we are, and we are one city, and we are all working together for the same cause. But one of the top priorities in this city is affordable housing. And when you look at the assessment map that I have right here,
Me too.
trust me, if we aren't along about the fact whether or not who's going to be able to live in the city of Richmond, when we have a chance to demonstrate this and put this out for public view and discussion, if anything in the city of all our priorities does not include affordable housing as a top priority, what I hear this city saying to the majority of the people that work for this city and many that live in this city right now, you need to be finding some surrounding little county that you might be thinking about moving to, because you're not going to be able to afford to live in the city of Richmond. That's just a fact. So we need to get rid of legislation that can't be enforced. We need to write legislation that will be enforced and can be. And we need to do that right away, because unfortunately, none of us can afford to sit in these seats anywhere in our leadership position and be not able to enforce our legislation because we haven't written it in a way that it works to accomplish the mission at hand. And so we're going to correct that. But until that is done, this legislation stands as it stands. Roll off, affordable housing. Delinquent tax sales, up to $1 million, affordable housing trust fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Jordan.
Just wanted to chime in here for a moment. Governmental Operations has been working on all of the reports that are meant to be delivered to council, whether they come from administration, our council staff, or boards and commissions. And I just want to draw attention to the fact that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Commission is required to submit an annual report by October 31st to land use. Also coming to land use by the end of the calendar year is the Maggie Walker Community Land Trust. So those are two opportunities to get more information. And I do encourage all of our council committees to look at these boards and commission all of these reports and make sure that they are useful to us, because there is information that we need in order to do our jobs. And if we're not getting it in a timely way, now is the opportunity. We have a staff member dedicated to the reports that we're getting as a body. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to say that the tragic injustice in terms of the wrongful incarceration of Mr. Grimm, 45 years, is how we got to this place. And the attempt by the administration to identify a source of funding that would not jeopardize the city's financial position and future opportunities to be able to leverage that status to be able to bring in more dollars. What this has also done with the administration identifying this particular source of dollars for all of us, and it's been stated by many of you, as they've gone to this particular ordinance, which has two components to it, and the component that they're looking at is the surplus of those funds that came out of the sale. It bespeaks unequivocally our need to, and several members, Ms. Gibson, Ms. Robertson, other members have stated it, to go back to the legislation. It says up to $1 million. It is not clear then in terms of any other usages. We need to fix that. Period. It's not clear, and some of you have mentioned that. I have the roll-off dollars. This isn't tapping into those at all. We still, and we're asking the administration to come back to us with that. We still don't have that number, but in this category, the amount, unfortunately, as it's delineated, is up to $1 million. I absolutely agree with Ms. Robertson, and I suspect all of you, affordable housing is an absolute priority for us in the city, period, end of paragraph. And we have to have reliable, absolutely reliable, not one time, but ongoing funds. And so looking at, when we go back to look at this legislation, and as we talk about, as we amend it, we need to make sure we are clear that these sources wholeheartedly, without any deviation, period, whether it's surplus or roll-off, goes to affordable housing, for me. We will certainly discuss that, but we have to have reliable sources for funding of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. really, Mr. Donald, I thank you for indulging my many phone calls relative to this item and how we get to, and is it the status of it and all of that, and all the other members who, thank you for indulging all of us and with that. I would say that at this point, based on what I've heard, we're looking at having some sort of work group, task group, look at this legislation as soon as possible. And it needs to be corrected. We can't, as soon as possible. It needs to be corrected, and we need to have amended. We need a solid implementation plan, follow-up schedule, reporting on both of these categories on a regular basis so we can make informed decisions and ensure that the funds from these sources, because that was our intent, from these sources, will go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as well as other sources that we might identify. So I'll just press pause there. And I think we have a couple of other comments. Councilwoman Trammell and then Councilwoman Gibson.
Yeah, I like, Odie, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I need you to clarify something. Okay, right now, because everybody's getting their assessments. I know mine just went way up. It's going to be frozen, it's going to be frozen next year. Or whatever, like, it went up like 6% or something, because this is what someone just asked me to ask you. It's
I don't have that data in front of me, but I think the effective, you have frozen the assessments effective 26
okay.
assessment.
All right, next year we're going to be okay, but it's 2028 that we're going to be hit hard because the freeze is going to come off, and then we got collective bargaining, which is about $25 million that we're going to definitely support and make sure that that gets funded. And then what are we going to do when the people get their assessments and it's like double? I mean, people are already screaming right now, and 2028, that's when we're going to really get these calls. And you talk about what is affordable. What is affordable housing? When you go and price something to fix your house, or, I mean, we're talking about the water's getting ready to go up, VEPCO's gone up, cable's gone up, groceries gone up, I think gas come down. But the basic to live in a house. So, I mean, how are we going to fix that in 2028? How are we going to help people be able to stay in their homes unless we go after all of this?
Yeah, and I apologize, I misspoke. Your assessments are going out now for your future year bills or whatnot. But to your question around affordability and the challenge that is coming, I mean, we are looking, I think I've heard the council say this and looking at your past meetings and, speaking with the mayor and just understanding the environment. This is definitely a time where resources are becoming more and more finite. I mean, we are not looking at a ton of growth in our assessments. I think all of y'all have met with the assessor. Councilmember Robertson, I heard you mention, you had met with him recently, and that, those double-digit growth numbers are now down to single digits. I think it's under 6%, which is about 6% less than what it was when it was 11.79. So we're definitely looking at a time where we have to kind of tighten up, our belts, and we'll have less money available to be able to do more. And so your question, Councilmember Trammell, is what are we going to do? I mean, well, one, we're going to figure it out, but I think we are going to have to look at how we spread the wealth, and I know you guys are looking at, you ladies and gents are looking at how you want to look at this legislation. I would also caution us, I keep hearing us say that, we did not implement the legislation or we did not follow it. The legislation provided you with some flexibility to be able to do 0 up to $1 million, and you had hundreds of millions of dollars in one-time fees come into the city, and what you chose to do was something responsible. You said, we will fund affordable housing at the highest rates that we can using this money that we normally would not have gotten. What we did not do is, and you see I corrected that, Councilmember Abubakar, I said we. And so what we did not do is, when we looked at what grew into $9.1 million, because it was not that. It grew into that because of everything from fees, interest, people paying, a bunch of different reasons. What we did not do is allocate, while we put this other money out on the streets, we did not also put that out on the streets. But sometimes that's important. You've got your fiscal house in order, and now you had a little bit of cushion, and you can pay something that you normally could not. I don't know if I would look at that negatively, and I also would not say that we did not follow the letter of the law, because we did. We made a conscious decision to be able to do much for our residents versus only doing frontline staff bonuses or the one-off things that everybody did. You did it all, and you're one of the few municipalities that actually use these dollars for affordable housing. I actually think that's something that you should be championed for more than looking at it as a negative. So you asked what we would do about it. I'm hopeful that we will use the same innovation that it appears you have used over the past few years to meet the needs of our residents.
Well, Odie, I just got a text from somebody in the first district that their assessments went up $150,000 on their home. $150,000.
Oh, yeah.
She says she's not going to be able to stay in the city much longer.
Times are definitely getting more expensive, and we have to be, again, thoughtful with all the decisions that we make. I fully agree with you as well as that resident, but also with all of our council members that we have limited resources and we've got to make sure we use them appropriately. So I am on board for that. I'm certain that the mayor is, because he's been very clear on that. And so I think, to Councilmember Robinson's point, we all have to stand together. I think we're doing that. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I wanted to thank Councilwoman Robinson for her leadership on this. She is certainly swayed me, and I plan to vote no on the paper. I also would like to support any efforts amongst my colleagues, if there are, to look at alternate funding sources for this, including the rainy day funds. And again, if there's a legal ability to do this, I would love to appropriate the funding that should have been allocated towards the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from the existing rainy day funds that we have, to ensure that we are following the law. I think the challenge we have in the last fiscal, the budget that we worked on now, is there were no funding from the stimulus funding or otherwise, and there was no discussion as to why we weren't putting money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as defined. And I think that there is certainly sufficient ambiguity regarding that flexibility, and so it becomes very muddy, I think. And the fact that the word "shall" exists, I mean, it's been an ongoing discussion. There was a advisory committee on the rules of court who wrote that the overwhelmingly majority of commenters and legal scholars recommended that rules drafters avoid the uses of "shall." The word has been described as, quote, the biggest troublemaker, quote, slippery, and the creator of, quote, booby traps, and is, quote, the most misused word in the legal vocabulary. So I think it's certainly something that's worth exploration. I appreciate interest in a task force, but from my perspective, that takes too long. I think that I know that there are council members with interest in introducing and developing papers on this with expediency. I'd be certainly happy to support, to put in a request to develop policy tomorrow. Where my interest is on this is, one, immediately funding whatever remaining funds, assuming that the paper passes, to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from the delinquent tax fund sales, and revising the language in that section to eliminate the use of the word shall, and to look at the language in the ordinance that requires our monthly reports to be broader, to ensure that all of those different funds are updated monthly along with the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go back to your point. There's an urgency around this for me in terms of the policy. And so I'm looking for something where council and the administration would work collectively with expediency. So I'm not talking about meeting ad nauseum. I'm talking about it as soon as possible. With that, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call the question.
Madam President, since we are talking about the amendments, this one paper includes both sources. And
That's correct.
And the rehab rollover has not been appropriated to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I would ask council, as we look at the total legislation, let's correct both sources. The delinquent sales is a much smaller dollar amount compared to the roll-off. That is, we already have a report from Davenport as to exactly what that would yield.
Yeah.
So I would want us to not, as we look at amendments and corrections as needed, so that we don't have the challenge we have before us now, that we address both sources, not just the delinquent. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councilwoman Robertson. That's the challenge in this paper, is that it has delineated two different sources. And the source for the 5.8 is one that has even greater lack of clarity in terms of where the balance could go in 0 to 1 million. So absolutely. With that, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call the question, and do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, there needs to be a motion put forth on the floor and properly seconded first relative to this ordinance.
Yes, I
Madam
did
Clerk,
that after.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to send this to formal council meeting with recommendation of approval.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. The committee is now voting on the motion to forward ordinance number 2025-188 to council with a recommendation to approve. Mr. Breton?
Aye.
Ms. Gibson?
No.
Ms. Jones?
Come back to me.
Ms. Robertson?
No.
Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Trammell?
Aye.
Ms. Abubakar?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jordan?
Aye.
Ms. Jones?
No.
And Chair Newbill?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's proceed to the next agenda item, and I will follow up. Mr. Donald, I want to follow up with the administration and with council representatives in terms of getting to the table as soon as possible relative to the revision of the, maybe a new ordinance or amending this one. So thank you. Thank you. If you would, let's proceed to the next item, Madam Clerk.
The next paper for consideration is item number 1, resolution number 2025-R020, and that's to establish the Civilian Review Board's policies and procedures pursuant to state code and city code. That paper is before the committee.
Thank you. Councilmember Trammell, did you want any comment at this point? Otherwise, Mr. Lowry.
Good evening, Council. Joe Lowry, Civilian Review Board Manager. Before you is the resolution to establish the Civilian Review Board policies and procedures. Now, the Civilian Review Board was established for the purpose of reviewing, investigating, and making recommendations to council, the mayor, and the police chief concerning internal investigations conducted by the Department of Police regarding police-involved shootings, death of persons while held in custody of the Department of Police, serious injuries of persons while in the custody of Department of Police, accusations of physical and verbal abuse by officers of the Department of Police and in appeals by citizens of findings or decisions of the Department of Police and providing recommendations on law enforcement practices, policies, and procedures. So that's the resolution before you today.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. At this point, we will proceed with a public hearing on the paper. Do we have persons present desirous of speaking in opposition to this paper? If you would come forward. Do we have persons present desirous of speaking in favor of this paper? If you would come forward. Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Bring it back to council for discussion. Seeing none, Madam or Mr. Clerk, Madam Clerk, you're still there.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair, there needs to be a motion relative
Yes.
to this resolution made.
Oh, absolutely, but yes. I just stipulate first that we call the question, and in order to do that, it requires a motion, so.
Correct.
Yes.
Madam President, I'll make the motion to approve this ordinance and send it to full council at our next formal meeting with recommendation for approval.
And I'll second it.
Thank you.
Thank you. The committee is now voting on the motion to forward resolution number 2025-R020 to council with the recommendation to approve. Mr. Breton?
Aye.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Robertson?
Aye.
Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Trammell?
Aye.
Ms. Abubakar?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jordan?
Aye.
And Chair Newbill?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's move on to consideration at this time of appointments to boards. Ms. Nichols.
Hello, organization. Madam Chair, Vice Chair Jordan, members of the Organization Development Standing Committee, Pamela Nichols, Council Management Analyst. So in your binders, you will see the approximately 56 applications that we received for the Civilian Review Board. And those applications were then reviewed by Richmond Civilian Review Board Manager Joseph Lowry and a review team. And should the committee make a recommendation, final appointment for these members is scheduled to be considered by council on September the 8th. But I will now yield the floor to Mr. Lowry so that he can provide an overview of the review and selection process.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. As you know, we had 56 applicants for the Civilian Review Board last summer. And after we received those applications, I put together a working group, which there were members from Health and Human Services, the Inspector General's office, the CAO office, liaison's office, as well as the mayor's office. From that working group, we identified 13 individuals to be interviewed for selection to the board, and from that, we were able to choose 8 individuals. So that was the process.
And I do want to note that the mayor has identified 4 individuals for mayoral appointments, but we have been in contact with city administration, and we would get those appointment recommendations. Well, we would get those letters of appointment from the mayor's office following council's actions.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions, comments? Councilwoman Jones?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, would you like for me to go over the list of recommendations?
Yeah, I thought everyone had, but yes, please, we have
Okay.
before us.
So, Mr. Lowry, do you want to do this? Okay, wonderful.
So for the council, we are presenting the names of Angela Fontaine, Evan Finman, Rafaela Sally, and Yanni Hawkins.
Okay.
And also on your cover sheet, you will see highlighted in orange, the mayor's pending appointments, and that would be Alicia Brown, Dante McCutcheon, David Poole, and LaShonda Singleton. But again, council will appoint 4 and the mayor will appoint 4.
Okay. So should we take them separately since the mayor, there is a packet with the mayor's designation of representatives and then the council's?
Right, so council does not have to approve the mayoral appointments.
Oh,
We're
okay.
just providing
No worry.
that information just for informational purposes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Trammell?
I would ask for us to continue the appointments because we got 3 new council members here, and also I would like to see that that we have more time to look at this and vote on it. You know, not per se tonight go over it. We could continue it.
Thank you. Councilman Breton, did you have comments as well?
I'm eager to make sure that this committee is actually able to start its business. I mean, I think it's just an important piece of accountability in our government, you know, especially in the context of, you know, the restitution for police wrongdoing that we just paid. I think we need to be serious about being serious about accountability and good policing in this city. So, you know, I do believe we've had time to review this list. We've had time to meet with Joe, Mr. Lowry, to discuss these. So, you know, at the very least, we would need to make sure that I would like to see this committee have, you know, enough for a quorum so that they could begin their business, and that's what I would like to see. So, I would ask us to move forward with appointments so the committee can do its business.
Any other comment at this time? Yes, Vice President Jordan.
Yes, Ms. Nichols, can you comment on how the appointment terms are going to be distributed? Because I know they're staggered since this is the first time we're selecting
Yes,
members.
Ms. Jordan,
Thanks.
the appointments will be staggered. There will be a 3-year term, a 2-year term, and a 1-year term. 2 members from council and 2 members from the mayor will be appointed for 3 years. 1 person from council, 1 person from mayor, 2 years, and then 1 person from council, 1 from mayor, 1 year.
Thank you. And how is that going to be determined who gets which term?
That is to be determined. Yeah, we haven't really, you know, there may be some that will only want to serve for a year. So we have to, once we go start the training, we will discuss all that at that time.
Thank you. I would like to offer a amendment to what's on the table. Councilmember Trammell has asked to have there be a continuance to allow for greater review by new members, but also just revisiting. Councilman Breton, I hear you. Also, I agree, we need to get this moving. And so what I'd like to suggest is that we would continue this to the September 8th meeting informal, and then that gives time for people to take, it's not a huge amount, but it gives time for people to look at the list, and then we decision at formal on the 8th, if that could work for everyone. Councilwoman Jones?
President, I just had a quick question. Those names that are highlighted in green and say that they serve on other boards, does that disqualify them because they serve on other boards?
It's not, and that is just used for informational purposes as well, so that council does have a policy that they will not appoint one person to any more than 2 boards. So we just use that as for informational purposes for you all decision-making.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would like to entertain a motion to continue to Monday, September 8th informal, which gives time for further review, and then September 8th formal for decisioning, if that could work for folks.
Madam President, I'll make the motion that we continue it to September 8th informal.
Second.
The committee is now voting on the motion to continue the appointment consideration of members to the CRB or Civilian Review Board to council's September 8th informal meeting, and then for consideration of final appointment at its 6 o'clock formal meeting. Mr. Breton?
Aye.
Ms. Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Robertson? Ms. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Trammell?
Aye.
Ms. Abubakar?
Aye.
Vice Chair Jordan?
Aye.
And Chair Newbill?
Aye.
That motion has been approved.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Thank you, Mr. Lowry.
Thank you.
We will proceed with the next presentation. Mr. Warren. This is the presentation on the Budget Review Task Force, which has worked diligently. Thank you to all of those who participated, administration and council.
Yes, may it please the committee, my name is R.J. Warren, Council Chief of Staff, here to provide you the recommendations found by the Budget Review Task Force. After the successful adoption of the FY26 budget, it was noted by both city administration and council that there were areas for improvement of council's budget review process, in addition to the city's budget development process as well. And President Newbill had tasked certain members of this body to lead that task force, which included the Vice President, Catherine Jordan, Finance Committee Chair, Ellen Robinson, council staff, and the council's chief of staff, in addition to the chief administrative officer, the mayor's chief of staff, and additional staff within the mayor's office. By the time I got appointed as your chief of staff, this body had already started moving, and though it was called itself a task force, it was more of a collaborative working group that met throughout the summer. We quickly identified opportunities from enhancement. This was both done through discussions we had as a group, but also from feedback we received from members. Here's a list of some of the opportunities for enhancement we found, but they basically broke down to three categories. One being a schedule. The task force received requests to increase the window for council review of the mayor's proposed budget. This would allow additional time for council to review the budget, have additional public hearings, provide city administration enough time to respond to council questions, as well as for council to have time to review those answers. We've also looked at the structure, and that included how we handle our budget work sessions. For instance, you'll see a recommendation shortly on how to make those more organized and valuable of your time. And then lastly, operational. The task force discussed the importance of early cooperation between both city administration and council, both internally in City Hall, but also in how it collaborates with the public. So here are some of the recommendations that the task force has agreed would be help improve the process of reviewing the budget and developing the budget. As you can see here, early collaboration, that's going to be in the next slide I'll address with you, but quickly on the restructured timeline, there was a compromise reached in these meetings where the budget submission will be advanced 16 days. And what this does is it's going to allow the clock to tick. And that's going to allow for the budget to be introduced legally and allow the first review and public hearing on the legislation to occur earlier. And when it comes to efficient work sessions, we looked at, in discussion with the CAO, of organizing these budget work sessions to be categorized within the 4 DCAO portfolios of operations, finance administration, planning, economic development, and human services. Some additional things we still need to settle on these work sessions, for instance, is possibly when council agencies will present before council and constitutional officers. So that will still be examined. And a standardized amendment process. I've watched 7 budgets in this chamber, and every year the amendments are somehow handled differently. And so we will look at how we can establish some standard operating procedures that will be written and available on the public website that both the public and council can hold themselves accountable for how we move forward with amendment processes. Some of these will include, we will go through when it comes to amendments, they will be done through prioritization of co-patrons. And what that means is when a council member puts forward an amendment, an enhancement they want, they will be tasked with lobbying their colleagues to get more support and co-patrons to this amendment. And then when it comes to deliberation of these amendments, we will go in descending order of the number of patrons. Therefore, 6 co-patrons to an amendment leads to a greater idea of consensus and a quick vote. And we will also enhance the public engagement. As I said, the timeline is moving up 16 days, and this is going to allow for the initial public hearing to occur in March, and then therefore we will have enough time to do what we did this year, which is have a public hearing just on council proposed amendments, so you all can get feedback from the public on things that you have proposed. And then I'll go into more detail here on some of those other public engagement enhancements. This will include, in January, we're going to publish our budget review process schedule. So you all in January will know how we're going to handle things in March, April, and May. In addition, I am aware that the mayor's team will also, in January, note when they plan to have mayoral town halls around the city to get the public's feedback on budget development. And I'll make sure you all are aware of these are occurring in your district. And then lastly, annual review. Though this task force / working group has concluded this summer, we plan to meet immediately after the next year's adoption to see if there's any changes that can be made at that moment to increase efficiency and how the process is working. So I touched on it just for a second, but early collaboration, some things that the task force has recommended that we do differently this year is usually in September, the city administration will have their budget kickoff, and that involves city administration leadership working with the department directors in this building in a private internal setting, usually virtual, to kick off the budget process. Council usually is not involved, public usually is not involved. However, this year, before that occurs, there was consensus that amongst the task force that there will be a September budget kickoff involving both city administration and council. This will occur somewhere off-site to kind of ceremonially acknowledge that budget development has started, and maybe some high-level information will be shared at that point, or some immediate issues that the city administration can foresee, and share that with council and the public. Another item that will be taking place this year, which will be different from in the past, is that in December, there's going to be a third-party facilitated joint meeting between the mayor, CAO, and council to identify 5 to 7 budget priorities that can be agreed upon. This will occur in early December. And what will happen is after these items are decided upon, there will be a resolution introduced formally, kind of like your legislative priorities, formally noting what these budget priorities are. But what that will require is a public hearing. So therefore, we will have in December a budget public hearing on the joint city administration council budget priorities. And I'm already planning, though, where this meeting will be in December. Council will meet together sometime in October or November to, as a body, decide what they think is as a united voice going into this December meeting. And then, as I noted earlier, the mayor plans to note his town halls for greater public input, and we in the council will note our budget work schedule for the calendar year. So here's just a snapshot of what March would look like for you all when it comes to the proposed restructured timeline. That red March 27th, that is technically now when the budget is supposed to be introduced per legislation, per city code. If this is the consensus of council that we move forward with these recommendations, then an ordinance will be drafted changing the budget submission from the mayor to a special meeting on the 11th. And what usually occurs at this meeting is the mayor will come forward, provide a presentation on the budget, And then immediately afterwards, the meeting ends, legislation is uploaded online, and the budget process starts. One thing the task force was able to come to an agreement upon is that at this 11th meeting, the mayor will come forth, provide a ceremonial introduction of the budget and his presentation. However, the CAO will remain available immediately afterwards at this same meeting to address questions from council at that moment to kick things off. And therefore now, the budget public hearing will occur on that March 23rd date, the very next formal meeting that will occur after budget introduction. That is a 21-day improvement on this current year, where the first budget public hearing happened at the first council meeting in April. And a side note as well, when it comes to budget public hearings, both for this first one, for the proposed one for amendments put forward by council, and a final one on amended budget ordinances, all of these are going to be scheduled at formal meetings to allow a greater opportunity for the public to participate in these meetings and not cause confusion with the need for special meetings. And here is the budget review timeline as proposed. This is just an example of what it could be. Budget introduction on March 11th, and you immediately get to work at one of these DCAO focused budget work sessions. And it should note the CAO will be there to address concerns, but he will have subject matter experts from each portfolio there to provide analysis. March 23rd, there's our first budget public hearing after that work session that day, and then another council budget work session on March 30th. April 6th, another budget work session, and then a proposed, this is going to have to be put forward after you all provide me consensus and our standard operating procedures of how we're going to handle amendments and the budget review process in itself. Council amendments would be due a little under 30 days later after introduction on April 8th. At this time, members can try to gain support of their amendments with their colleagues, and on that first council meeting in April, we'll have a public hearing on the proposed amendments put forward by council. So as I just said, at this last budget, that was the first public hearing, and now we're already having the public hearing on proposed amendments put forward by council. And then on the 20th, 22nd, that's usually been the case the last few years where you have a Monday, Wednesday work session scheduled to iron out amendments, enhancements, and reductions. And then at the finish line, the last meeting in April, you all would do the procedural step of amending and continuing budget ordinances to May 11th final vote. As you see here, May 26th available date. I just note that there because one thing I am requesting is that the school budget be put forward in a separate ordinance this year and not be included in the overall budget ordinance, because the city charter requires the school budget to be adopted mid-May, but the city budget to be adopted at the end of May. And if for some reason we need those extra weeks, it'll be available to us if we have to re-advertise, have a special meeting, an additional amendment comes forward at the end. I want you all to have the flexibility that the city charter allows you. Implementation strategy moving forward. So if it is the consensus of this body to move forward with the March 11th date, council staff will begin drafting the ordinance to change city code for that date and noting the introduction date. Over the next couple of months, with continuous feedback from you all and buy-in, we will start the documentation process in the council chief of staff's office to write up standard operating procedures on how we handle budget work sessions, how we handle amendments. And as I said earlier, once the budget is adopted in May, we will meet immediately again to see if there's any additional improvements that we can act on next summer. Some outstanding consideration items just to bring to your attention. The RPS funding formula per resolution number 2025-R023. That working group is, as of this moment, is currently being established to complete the requested funding formula as noted in the resolution. Departmental level budget request, ordinance number 2025-100. That item is still pending before council. It'll go to it's up for a recommendation at the Finance Committee meeting in September. And if it comes out of committee, it would then go forward to a vote before the full body at the end of September. And just to note, the Budget Review Task Force discussed this item, and the patron's reasoning for going forward with this ordinance is that the patron believes that it will strengthen City Council's oversight. It will increase transparency for both council members and the public, reveal when the mayor's final budget differs from what agency directors originally requested, and ensure proper explanation when proposed funding falls short of agency needs. However, the task force could not come to an agreement that this should go forward, and it was the consensus that it not. And that was because the task force noted that departments might inflate their initial requests, expecting cuts during negotiations, and this could create unrealistic public expectations about available funding. Administrative leadership might be unfairly criticized for making necessary financial decisions within budget constraints. And they believe, the task force believes, that the approach and suggestions in this final report of the Budget Review Task Force has enhanced public engagement, structured work sessions, promotes collaborative priority setting that achieves the transparency requested in this ordinance, but maintaining good governance and administrative flexibility. And non-departmental, the city administration is moving forward to restructure how they handle the non-departmental grant process, and more information will be provided to you all by them shortly. Coming to a conclusion, I have some information up here, but it quickly highlights that the timeline will be better for your all's review. It's giving you 16 more days, additional public hearings, and most importantly, I want to avoid chaos in this chamber, so therefore you will not be thrown a bunch of paper expecting to make decisions on it immediately. I want to have you all to have time to provide administration questions. I want administration to have sufficient time to provide you responses, and then we can help you provide analysis of those responses. I believe that these recommendations will provide sufficient time for a thorough analysis, meaningful public engagement from the start, clear procedures, and promote shared priorities between all forms of government in this building. And that is the conclusion of this report. Thank you.
Mr. Warren, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Vice President Jordan and Councilmember Robertson, Mr. Donald, Ms. Lawson, Megan Brown, and all of the other administrative staff who worked on this collaboratively. Thank you. It reflects the kind of thoughtful and strategic planning that gets us out of past processes that did not allow for as much time as any of us would like for review, and I greatly appreciate that. I'd like to ask if there are questions, and it looks as if I have a couple. Let me see the order here. So Councilwoman Gibson, then Councilwoman Alva-Backer, and then Councilwoman Jones.
And Chair, new bill, Ms. Lynch also has a question to ask.
And then Councilwoman Lynch.
Thank you, Madam President. And I want to first highlight, I think, the big win, and of course I'm going to have comments, but I just want to underscore that I am very appreciative that we are discussing getting an additional 16 days to work on our billion-dollar budget. I think that is critical, and I'm incredibly appreciative of that. I do want to highlight a couple of points, though. So one, and I say this with utmost respect, but I do think that the elephant in the room is that the task force in this instance didn't include the new members who I think were the most vocal about concerns with the budget process. And so I do think that we should revisit our rules and procedures as it just pertains to how we establish task forces at all. I think that this should be a public discussion, and the body should vote for participation in the task force. And I do think that it would have been a wonderful opportunity to have one of the new council members participate in this process, as we were the folks who I think highlighted many concerns in the recently adopted budget. The other thing I think, which kind of is an overarching point, is that if we learned anything from the discussion we had earlier this afternoon, which lasted about an hour, I think, it is in the importance of formalizing our processes through code and very clear language so that there's less flexibility. Because we want to ensure that there is clarity in what those laws and processes are. Mr. Warren highlighted that, every year it's been a little different, and I think the only way to get around every year having it be a little different is to codify it in either in our rules and procedures or in our ordinances. And so my proposal is that we take additional steps. I saw the suggestion that we codify the March 11th date for that presentation. I also think we need to codify that that we will vote on amendments. We will not it won't be a decision by consensus. I think there was a lack of clarity in that process. I also think that we should codify that our amendments are public. I think having the amendments be public is one of the most important things we can do as a body to bring more transparency to this process. And I say that because, look, making suggestions on the budget, it is a touchy subject. It is, and I get it. And this body works hand in hand with folks in administration on all of the things that happen as a city. And so I know that suggesting that we make a cut here or add more money there, it is a touchy subject. But we need to have transparency in what we are all proposing to do, both in terms of the cuts and in the additions, and it needs to be clear where there is support. In this past budget, when it came to the cuts, it just said staff, and then there's no clarity who's supporting what those cuts are. And so I think that making it public is a way of making the process run more smoothly and giving the public more transparency where we are. And it's not, I would say it ensures that all council members are approaching this the same way by putting their names both to the cuts and to the proposed additions. So, so by and large, my main point is that we codify this process. I think that we take there are additional recommendations that should be codified in ordinance or in our rules and procedures. I also wanted to highlight that or make a request that at our next OD meeting that we discuss the non-departmental budget process. I have seen the recommendation made by administration, and I will be frank, I do have some hesitation that we have a large amount of money that's not spent on that's spent and put to non-government bodies, nonprofits, and now we are suggesting that we pay an outside private entity to determine how public monies are spent in private entities like this. I question this. I'd like to understand it better, and I think that having a discussion from the administration and having the body discuss this collectively would be a wonderful next step to do. So, big picture, thank you for all of the work. I appreciate it. It was a lot of work, but I do think that it is important that we codify this work, that these are more than agreements, that these are essentially rules that we abide by to ensure that there is ongoing transparency, not just in this next upcoming budget season, but in years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson, and we've been taking notes, and those comments will be going back to the task group, and I concur with you about codification of these items by resolution or ordinance, whichever is more appropriate. Councilmember Abubakar?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague, and I've said this to you and to Councilmember Robertson. As one of two people who voted against the budget specifically on merits of the process, it was disheartening to me to not learn of the task force or an opportunity to serve on it until well in advance of it being done. And I think it would have just been, we would have had some skin in the game if we were a part of that process. I understand that there's seniority and things like that, but I do agree that in general, if a task force should be something that is deliberated as the whole body. I want to again echo that I do not want to diminish the work of this task force. And I know many hours went into preparing not only this document, but working together with administration. At the end of the day, the most significant piece of this from 6 months of deliberation is a 16-day in advancement in the budget cycle. That is, again, not to be diminished, but in terms of what I felt compelled to, put myself on the line and say, like, why the budget process is flawed intrinsically. Yes, 16 days is helpful, but it does not get to the core of the problem with our understanding of a $3 billion budget in less than a month's time. I do think that these fall meetings will certainly help. I respectfully disagree with the task force's assessment that Councilmember Lynch's legislation around a side-by-side agency comparison is not needed or will create undue strain or confusion. That is our job as legislators and the mayor's extensive communications team to communicate why changes may happen to the public and to bring them in on that process. So I still think that Councilmember Lynch's legislation, which I will remind everybody, a majority of people signed on as co-patrons, including one person from the task force, should continue to advance, because that is probably a piece of the most meaningful work we can do. And I don't think that not legislating out of a place of fear or anxiety about what the public may or may not interpret is a strong case for anything. And then I would also just, again, part of the flaw in the system on our side is this notion of district priorities. Yes, there will be district priorities in each of our districts, and yes, we hear what our constituents need, but intrinsic to this flaw is that we think that we will fight over scraps for our individual districts while losing the view of what is best for the greater city. And the process is designed to make us tear each other down in order to get these scraps for our districts. So I would say, as we're moving forward, and I mentioned this to Mr. Warren, we as a body, as council, needs to come together and say, what are our individual priorities in our districts? Where are those through lines in those priorities? And then how do we establish those as citywide council priorities, not these district priorities? Because if we continue to do the same thing over and over again, but we put a different font or color on it, it is still the same problem, and we'll still end up with the same problem. So I would just implore us as a body to think not about districts, but about the city as a whole. I think Mr. Donald put it aptly that there are finite resources. People are, Councilmember Robertson said it, feeling overwhelmed by the price of living in this city that has jumped significantly in the last 5 years. And so we need to be more thoughtful about how we are managing this money in our budget. Those are just sort of my observations of this task force's results.
Thank you, Councilwoman Norberbacher. Councilwoman Jones?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Councilmember Jordan and Robertson for working so diligently on the revision of this process. And much like my colleagues, it is not to diminish any of it. And I want to note that we keep saying there are only 3 new council members. I am new too. I was appointed, and so this process is really fully new for me as well. And I experienced the exact same challenges that my colleagues have mentioned and has, continued to highlight. So, one, I think Councilwoman Abubakar kind of stole my thunder here a little bit, but going back, we added more days to the process. But before we even get to the budget process, we're meeting constantly with the mayor. We're meeting constantly with DCAO. We're meeting constantly with different, administration. And so we are already aware before a budget process even starts what's going on in District 1 through 9. So when we do come to a budget process, we are actually, if we are looking at this from a citywide perspective, should already kind of have somewhat of a framework. And this notion of, and you mentioned this as well, Ms. Abubakar, about, lobbying your colleagues. I'm not a fan of that because, number one, when you are representing a district that, does not have the same experiences as another district, in my opinion, that's an inequity in and of itself. And so if we're not going to, and I mention that because I'm saying if we're having all these citywide conversations, then why do we get to the budget process and are fighting over what we need? So something in this process is still broken. And if it's the 16 days that we made up, then we need to look at those processes that we are still putting forward that are going to achieve the same results. Because if we're not looking at this from a citywide, whether it's housing, whether it's a family crisis, whether it's rent, eviction, stability, all the things, right? And so we continue to say, hey, as a city, we support these challenges that the city is facing, but in the same context, we still are only giving somewhat, in terms of funding towards these. So I would like to know, as a part of this process, how are we going to truly look at it all? And how are we truly going to move forward from a priority? Specifically, also, I cannot, I'd be remiss, as they say, if we do not highlight the 8th and the 9th district, where you only can build in this moment. So if we are beginning to look at processes as a whole and we are not taking all of that into consideration, we are only still doing the same thing that we've already done. And so I think that, yes, it is very chaotic during budget time. We have a lot of meetings, a lot of time, but I think a lot of that can be eliminated when we truly start having these real conversations about what we are doing, because we already know the priorities way before the budget even starts. So I don't understand how we get to this place of the budget, when we knew in January, we are not talking about the growth. We are not talking about what that is going to look like, but we're talking about assessments. So we leave out part of the conversation and then we get to the budget and we say, we don't have money. So I'm saying we all have to be accountable of that. And we all have to have conversations around that, because that is the only way we really are going to fund this city in a way that we keep saying, so that we want everybody to be able to stay here. So, and lastly, the process to look at budgets side by side, or I think it was to give the budgets beforehand, the departmental budgets. I think that is still coming from that mindset of, we don't know what's going on, the scarcity, right? And we have to get out of that, because the realization is we don't need to try to dictate what the administration is doing, and the administration does not need to dictate what council is doing, but we all need to be responsible for the citizens of this city. And I just feel like we continue to sit here and talk about equity and justice and all of these things, and then we create a process that does not mention the major priorities of the city.
May I respond?
Thank you.
To that? Just
I have-
regarding the,
Go on.
just regarding the 16 days, hopefully, yes, hopefully we know a lot more this year, go around with this mayor and the CAO on the budget before March 11th. But it is a large budget, and those 16 days will allow council members, council staff, liaisons, the public, immediate hands-on to review this large document and these attachments to see things that aren't getting talked about in the news that night or in the chamber. And then there's just a lot of legislative and state requirements when it comes to procedures of public hearings and advertisements, and it just will give you all more cushion to get those things done and not run out of time. That's the main reason I push for the 16-day enhancement. In regards to ordinance 2025-100, Ms. Lynch is going to speak to that in a moment. It's before the Finance Committee and then before Council, and Council will make the collective decision on that ordinance. And your comments and suggestions and concerns, totally noted, and we'll review those and see how we can adjust.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lynch and then Councilman Breton.
I apologize. I was trying to mute myself. And agree, and obviously always appreciate the extra credit time that council members and the administration have put into this process. This we have been at it. I mean, I came on council 2019. There are members that have been serving a lot longer than I have, obviously. But safe to say we've been at it for a long time. We've tried it several different ways. As RJ mentioned, our chief of staff, we've done it differently every time. And I think my council colleague Abu Bakr said it best. I mean, we're changing. In these recommendations, and I applaud the buying us 16 days of time. But we're really changing the font color and the size. But at the end of the day, the dynamic is still the exact same. And the dynamic is we get handed a budget. There's very, 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 very little wiggle room within that budget for us to advocate for amendments, truly. Demonstrative amendments that will have, a sizable impact or actually, fund the things that Councilmember Jones is talking about. I think all of us, care and share a passion for. And so, at least since I've been on council, every year we fight about, we go across, we make amendments for, decision with each other, less than $1.5 million every year since I've been on council. And $1.5 million split 9 ways, or even if you fund one priority, I mean, it's just not enough to say that council has had a true impact in carrying the voices of the community and funding the priorities as a city. And I think Councilmember Jones summed it up, quite beautifully. That we all care about, and in order for us to really be a part of that process, and for the community to really engage, we have to have the tools of information and transparency in order to do that. And so, even for example, RJ, and I would love to ask you this question. I mean, coming up with the citywide priorities and passing that resolution in December, I have to ask, okay, well, when are the agency submissions due, and how baked is the budget at that point? Now, if we all come together and say we want $30 million, I'm hypothetical, $30 million in affordable housing, by the time we pass that in December, is there even time to build an expense like that into the city operating budget? You have to wonder, right? And then likewise, with the timeline of having to vote for the RPS budget, that 16-day extension is helpful, but my goodness, we've already voted on the largest chunk of our budget at this point, second to public safety, which is Richmond Public Schools. So again, I have to question how much money, how much do we actually have on the table to fund some of those priorities and to really make a big, to make a difference. So I think arming. There's some things that we can do aside from moving the dates around. I think a greater level of data and transparency generally into the Oracle system, having our staff become trained and well versed in how to use that so that we can track money and funding in the same way that our counterparts in the administration can. That would be helpful. Those are things that give us, that put us on even playing field, and allow us to be the type of responsible legislators, responsible to our taxpayers, responsible and responsive to the needs of our community. Those are the types of things that give us the tools to do that. Moving the date around and I'm appreciative of having that extra time. I agree it needs to be codified. I'm just not sure how it really changed the calculus for us and gives us the ability to make the impact that I know we all want to make.
Thank you. Councilman Breton.
I think that there may be kind of more to the early phase of collaboration than we may be giving credit for. I mean, I know that there is a lot of benefit to getting consensus among council around what our priorities are, making sure we communicate that to the CAO and the mayor so that they can put that in the first version of the budget, right? The best way to get things done is to have it in the first version of the budget rather than try to find the money after the fact, right? So that early phase of collaboration, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and there may be more benefit in this plan than people are sort of noticing, but I think it would benefit all of us to look at that even more and say, well, okay, well, what would it mean to have a successful September kickoff? What would it mean to have like that December thing? Councilmember Lynch's question about is December actually too late for the budget? Those are very important questions because I think that early collaboration phase is one of the most effective times to get things done the easy way, right? Now, that being said, then they also have the next job of diving in and doing the hard work of finding the numbers, validating it, and figuring out what needs to change. And I think we have the responsibility to do both of those things. And so on that second phase, that's where these requests for more information, I think, are going to remain on the table, those budgets. I mean, there might be other types of information that we feel we need to make proper decisions. And a more collaborative front end is excellent and going to be half of the battle, and I think, or half of the success, right, and the collaborative success. And then access to more information will be, the second half. So I think I would like to, hear more about how the early collaboration works and how, truly effective it might be. And then I also think you should expect that we're still going to ask for more transparent information.
Thank you. Councilmember Trammell.
Thank you. RJ, I just want to say thank you for, bringing this to us tonight, because I don't think all these years being on council we've ever had this many extra days that you've been, bringing forward to us tonight. And my colleagues have a lot of good questions. I know that, I know that the first meeting, we need to know exactly how much money we have, per se, from the mayor, how much more revenue is going to be coming in from the assessor's office, and all of that, because, we all got a lot of things we want to have for our districts, a lot of things that we've been waiting 10, 15 years for. And, it's kind of like a wish list that doesn't get, doesn't always get taken care of because we don't have enough money, millions and millions of dollars. Just like one development or one project that I got in my district is $27 million. It's almost completed, and it's taken me 15, maybe 16 years to get it done. And that's over there on the McGuire area, for all the drainage issues and street paving and all that over there. $27 million. It didn't start out that much, but it's taken us years to get that money saved so that we can continue in phases to get it done. So I just want to say thank you for your hard work, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you. Vice President Jordan.
Thank you. Appreciate all the comments, and just want to thank again our staff, both Mr. Warren, who came in after the task force had already been created here at council in front of everybody, as well as Mr. Perkins and our other partners in administration and the budget team. So comments noted, absolutely. Appreciate the dialogue, especially appreciate everyone who spoke up during budget season, who replied to the surveys, who replied to our staff members who were requesting feedback on the work that we were trying to put together. And I will note that it was, it's always more difficult in a transition year between administrations. And so I want to, lift up our new partners administration. That's nothing against our past members. But I will say Mr. Donald really felt like things started to take off once you were there because we had a better sense for the direction our new CAO would be taking with the budget. And it'll continue to evolve. I think one of the most important things in this whole document is the statement that we're going to, as soon as this budget is wrapped, we're going to be assessing this budget. And we're going to have to continue improving because most noteworthy, this budget is still a transition year where we do not have the land book aligned to the same schedule as our counties get to enjoy. And that makes it a lot more difficult for all of us. So I know this is a work in progress. I think, a lot of this is not within our control. It's the mayor's budget. I really welcome the collaboration that they have invited for setting priorities early, and absolutely, that's where we're going to see a product that hopefully is a smoother process when we're landing it on the other side. And I think new members, you've got an exciting year ahead of you as you learn to take off with the budget and get it into the air. You only got to experience the crash landing during a tough transition year. So with that, I would just say appreciate all the comments, keep sending them, and this is going to be an evolving process. Again, thank you, staff.
Thank you, Vice President Jordan. Councilwoman Gibson.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of the discussion that we've had on this. I just want to, close my perspective by highlighting that I think the key in all of this is how we integrate the public into the process. And so, so a lot of the stuff that happens ahead of the formal presentation of the budget are kind of behind closed door collaboration. And really the public gets involved when the budget is published. And so that time period in between when the budget is published and when we make adoptions is really critical. And so I think, it's not, I don't think the expectation is to have the budget wrapped in a nice bow when it's presented, but rather to present a budget that is our best faith effort to reflect what the city's priorities are, and then allowing us to be accountable for ensuring that happens by encouraging public participation, listening to the public during that process, and making amendments so that it is truly a citywide process. We talk about the people's budget. The entire $3 million budget is the people's budget. And I think that, this is a democratic body and we need to uphold the democratic processes that we have in place through that participation, which, I recognize is not always easy. It can be messy, but I think that's the nature of what we do. Thank you.
Just to add to that, I am in agreement. That's why I think the 16 days earlier for the budget to get their hands on, the public to get their hands on the budget. The first public hearing happening 21 days earlier than this year. And then up here on the board where it says, council amendments due on the 8th. That is the reason the 8th, that Wednesday is picked, is so we can get them online, preferably that day, maybe the 9th, so they are online a few days before the 13th, where you would have that public hearing.
So I want to say thank you. We've captured the comments and certainly we'll make sure those go into task force for review. I just want to say that this budget proposed timeline allows for several things, some which are not included in terms that were raised by members, codification of the process, priority setting. But this suggests an even greater opportunity for more strategic intentionality in terms of how we deal with the citywide challenges in a way that also takes a look at what's happening in the district. I'll give you an example. For me, we have food deserts still in the city, at least 3 districts that need more grocery stores, but we do one-offs versus looking more strategically at how we address those challenges across the city in a way that we are able to leverage the resources we have, increase the responsiveness to entities. So we have opportunity here, and I'm very appreciative of the work and the vision here with the administration, Mr. Donald, and certainly with members of council, and then the suggestions that you have made that will allow us to further improve on this process and bring this back. So with that, more to come in terms of follow-up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Warren, thank you for bringing that forward. And again, thank you to everyone who worked on this.
Thank you for your attention and feedback.
There is one last item. I was asked by members to give an update on the Office of the Inspector General position and filling that position. And just to give you an overview of where we are in the process, a job announcement has been drafted and communicated and forwarded to HR, and they are ready to post when we contact them. After this meeting, the plan is to finalize the job posting by the end of the week, submit job descriptions to all members so you can have that information. The job would remain open continuously, but the first review of applications will occur after 30 days. I would like to ask for members who would like to volunteer, at least 2 council members, to serve on the interview panel for this position. That's where we are at this point. Say again? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, and if you would let RJ know if you are interested in serving on the interview panel. I'm asking for at least 2 members to be on a panel of 5.
I would like to, because this is an important hire, we're talking
Yes.
about our Inspector General who's doing important work. I would also ask that we leverage the input of all of the staff members who are in the department. You know, they've seen a good amount of turnover over the short time frame in terms of the leadership in that department, and they're doing critical work that I do not think we can afford to risk seeing any hiccups or, you know, lapse. And so I really think that the folks who are on that team, I respect the work that they're doing. I think they're playing a critical role, and I think it is incumbent upon us to ensure that we're listening to them. And so I would suggest that, you know, I want to ensure that all of them are able to participate in the committee, in the selection committee. I also would really like for the entire body to hear from them collectively in terms of how we go next, where we go next on that position. You know, this department is essentially, you know, overseeing and ensuring that we are compliant with legal issues that are, you know, have a huge fiscal impact and otherwise. And I think that we have to do due diligence to ensure that we are being very considerate with that process.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. And what I'll do is make sure we work with HR to have a process by which we engage all staff and hear from them in terms of this position and feedback. So we can work with HR to make sure that that's the case. People can do it anonymous, whatever the case that makes it something that they feel comfortable with. So thank you for that. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing nothing, thank you all. Thank you all for your time and your due diligence. This meeting now stands adjourned.